Welcome to the Roundtable for Thursday. Boy, it's already May 28th. Where'd the month go? Um, things are moving about 8 miles a minute. So we're going to talk about Iran today. We're going to talk about uh, probably we'll talk the economy. We'll probably talk fuel shortages. But I wanted to start out with Memorial Day stuff because it's one of those freak things that you walk into and I, I'll just walk you through what happened on Monday. So Monday we went to the troops place for a Memorial Day barbecue, and about 10-15 minutes before we got there, one of his buddies. You guys were unloading a trailer, right? Is that what you're doing? Unloading something?
Yeah, I loaned him my trailer. He just backed in my trailer and parked the truck. And then I was behind there like unhooking the chains and stuff, and he was driving, so he got out of his truck, opened the door, and you know how the door will rebound back on you if you open it up too fast. So he spun his body out to get out of the truck, and as he was getting on his feet out of the truck, the door rebounded, hit his holster, and his sig discharged into his leg. So I heard the shot, right? And I went, "What the fuck? That was a gunshot." I was like, "Hey Chuck, are you okay?" And I could tell he was like a little bit like, "What happened?" So I checked me. I ran around to the front of the truck. I'm like, "Dude, are you good? Are you bleeding?" And he's like, "I don't know." I'm like, "Pull your fucking pants down right now. Pull them down." And he had shorts on. And sure enough, man, fucking muzzle right to the leg. So I fucking grabbed him. And it's a one day of the year I'm wearing swim trunks, right? So everybody makes fun of me because I carry my tourniquet in my cargo pocket all the time. Well, thank God the training room was only like, 20 feet away. So I just fucking grabbed him and I dragged him into the training room. Wyatt, the EMT that I trained, was in the pool with his girlfriend. I'm like, "Wyatt, training room, Brandy, 911 now." And then that happened at 12:46. And the lady that was here in my camera showed 12:46. And when I looked over at my atomic clock in my training room after I had him zipped, it was 12. I wrote 12:47 on his leg. So within a minute of him being shot, we were able to identify what happened, where it happened, relocate him, and then at that point, I started packing him. And Brandy already had 911 on the phone, so it was. A lot of people said, "Oh, it was great that he was at Trooper's house when this happened." I don't put that on me because I just followed my training. If he would have died, that would have meant that it also would have been on me. So the only person that deserves a gold star in this scenario is the guy that invented the fucking tourniquet. And then thankfully there was a competently trained person that had a tourniquet available to them that was able to utilize it when there was a need. So that,
explain on the leg where the bleed was.
The bleed was about 4 or 5 inches below the hip on the outside, and it was from the groin. It was probably not more than like an inch or two below the groin. Like if this is your groin, that gunshot was entered probably like 2 inches below that. And so I had to do him high and tight anyway. And then the other problem was there wasn't an exit wound, so I didn't know if it went all the way through, if it had an artery,
no exit
where
wound.
it was.
No exit wound. No exit wound.
No, it's still the bullet's still in there.
Yeah, so that's the scariest thing, right? Because you're like, well, fuck, where did it go? And then after the hydrostatic shock, when it started pumping, I was cranking that fucking tourniquet down, and that blood was still coming. So I took
What kind of tourniquet was it?
It was a Cat 3 tourniquet, or Gen 7 Cat and our Cat tourniquet, standard tourniquet.
Wow.
Look, it happens like that quick, man.
Yeah, I got there and I went in the training room and they're cleaning up after it, and the first thing I looked at him, I'm like, "You okay, man?" Because that's a lot of adrenaline. And he's like, "I'm good. It takes that kind of shit happens, and it takes hours, if not days, to come down from that adrenaline because it happens so fast. Yeah. But the reason I bring it up on the show is that it's a lesson in why we always talk about use your gear and stay vigilant, because these things happen that fast. And he's still walking around there like he stayed the night at your house. You changed the bandages, And now he's got to go deal with the medical system to get that bullet out of his. It's in his calf, right? It's not in his.
Yeah, it's buried into his calf. It went all the way down the subcutaneous fat, spinning like a razor blade doily. Between the subcutaneous fat, between the skin and the muscle. So it did a bunch of nicking, and it ended up partially embedded in his lower calf muscle, about 2 or 3 inches above his ankle.
All that energy went into his leg muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude. And it's, I mean, like the next day that when the swelling phase begins, you could tell right where the round went in, about 4 inches below that. It was just, like an old woman's cottage cheese legs, but like brown, like a banana, when it's been on the counter too long.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we're going to use a lot of lidocaine on you. So
there'll be a lot of debridement. There'll be a lot of debridement.
Yeah, he got sent to the hospital. He was there for a few hours. They stapled him shut, and whatever the trauma surgeon was, he didn't want to come in, and they're like, whatever. So they gave him a CAT scan, and he had like a number of little micro bleeds along the path of the bullet, and they're like, well, we don't want to pull the bullet out right now because it's stable. We're more worried about the wound. So my wife went and picked him up and brought him back here because he drove his truck here. He's no way he's going to drive home. And I'm like, dude, just stay with me because I worry about shock. I worry about the aftermath with the mental infection, a leaky, bleedy wound, because you don't know what's going to happen after that. So he spent the night here. The next morning I changed his dressing. We got him all squared away. He went to the VA. The VA did the same thing. He was there all fucking day. He was pissed off at the end of the day, and that told me he's doing okay mentally, because he's angry. But they did the same thing. Trauma surgeon, osteosurgeon, whatever. But 3 different guys looked at him, and they're going to wait until the primary wound heals, and those little micro abrasion bleeds and the other damage that happened to his tissue gives it some time to heal. Wait for infection monitoring and stuff like that before they go in after the bullet and open up another surgical site, just to make sure they're not compounding the issues that he has. So he's stable now. It hit him. I mean, I'm a trained first responder, so I'll like stuff the emotion until my own time, but somebody that just never has experienced anything like that. Wyatt's girlfriend we had to bring her down. She's just full of adrenaline. So there's a lot of things that happen after the bang where you or people that are on your team need to understand how to communicate with the police, how to control the scene, how to secure the area. I mean, there's a whole bunch of shit going on. But as far as the gunshot wound went, the one fucking day of the year that I have swim trunks on, and believe me, my anxiety went up just a little bit when I assessed him, because the rule is you hear the bang or you're in a situation like that, you check yourself, check your buddy checks you, that you just have to do that. And he was fucking bleeding, and I immediately went for the cargo pocket, and I felt just my bare calf or my thigh, because I'm wearing swim trunks. So I just fucking grabbed him, and I'm like, we're going to go where the tourniquets are. So you can't be prepared for everything. And I know people aren't going to carry their stuff on them, but at least have that shit in your car, or your purse, your RV, somewhere where where it is, where your fire extinguisher is. You should have one, in every room like me, but you should have one, and have a fucking blowout kit right next to that fire extinguisher. I mean, at the bare minimum. And again, know how to use it. So it's, you're either going to...
You might want to explain what a blowout kit is.
The most essential thing is just a tourniquet, because we're about 5 minutes away from 911. It took them like 20 minutes to clear their units to come in here. I was getting pissed. That's another story. But you have a tourniquet, which is going to immediately put constriction on the limb. And then you have packing gauze, which you fill in a hole. So if you have a junctional area, or, a place like an armpit or a groin or somewhere on the body that you can't put a tourniquet, you want to pack it with gauze. And then the third part of that is some type of compression dressing, which is like, just take like a big maxi pad with some gauze on each end. And that does 2 things. That helps put pressure on the wound, and then it also wraps around the wound. And you have to remember that there's a difference between gunshot trauma in a city where you have 911 on the way, and gunshot trauma where you're in an austere environment, and your secondary issue is infections or the introduction of dirt and filth and stuff like that in the wound, stabilizing the patient. So at least have a tourniquet on you. if you're going to go to a sports event or, out in public or whatever, even if you can't cover the wound or you just get somebody with napkins or whatever, if you have a tourniquet and they're lucky enough to get shot in, an arm or a leg, that's great. But also know that if a lot of people, they get shot in the chest or the abdomen or the head or, somewhere that your conditions of success go down greatly depending on what the incident is. So only worry about the things that you can control. And if you train, you're either going to do two things in an emergency. You're either going to respond or you're going to react. If you're trained, you're going to respond. You're going to fall back on your training every time, just like autopilot. If you're not trained, then you're going to react, freak out, panic. There's always that one person in the crowd that's a screaming woman that doesn't help anybody. Don't be that person, right? Steve's like, but I'm glad that, he's going to be okay. I feel better because I've talked to him every day, the last 2 days, and and I know he's going to be okay and stuff, but he's also got his own emotional things. This was unfair. This shouldn't have happened. Trooper told me not to get a good deal on a used SIG P320, and I did anyway. And I have to suppress my bitter fucking anger for whoever sold him that gun because they were trying to unload it. And you guys know on my channel, I cut my M17 in half through the fucking trigger group. A year and a month ago, I looked it up. A year and a month ago, I ran a metal grinder through my SIG M17, the P320, because it failed a functions check after I cleaned it. After hearing about all this other stuff and these uncommanded discharges, and I went, "This is fucking bullshit. I'm not gonna sell the weapon. I'm not gonna put it out in general population where it can fucking hurt someone." So if you guys have a fucking 320 of any variant, take one for the fucking team. Be a man and fucking demill that motherfucker. Cut it in half. Hit it with a sledgehammer. Just fucking make them go away.
It's the same with magazines that you don't trust. Stomp them.
Fucking A.
A magazine gives you a couple glitches. Stomp them. But what would have happened, Troop, if this happened on a camping trip? 2 hours out in the desert with an untrained person? What could have happened? Even with a trained person, I would have stabilized him, and we would have immediately responded to that. But most people are like, "Oh my God, what do I do?" People started praying and doing things like that. Other people, I've responded to injuries in public, like motorcyclists going down, and people pull out their fucking camera phones, and not to call 911, but just to, "Oh look, I'm going to get likes over this." So. And people get in the way. I've had to intervene with traffic and go, "You call 911, you stand over here, block traffic, you drag your fucking bike off the road." You have to have someone to take charge of the situation. And if you're doing affirmative things that are clearly trying to help the situation, I found generally the public will respond. They're sheep. They're like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. And then reassure the casualty. So
where could people go to learn how to use a tourniquet?
TCCC.org. You can go on YouTube. I recommend that you stick with like Guardian Angel or Dark Angel Medical, I believe. TCCC. I think Chris and Brushbeater have a class coming up. Is it Joe? Chris, I don't know who is it having? They're having a medical class coming up in one of their trainings. And the two people that they have there are their trainers that they're going to have. They're trauma certified guys. I don't remember their names. It's a man and a woman. But if you go on to YouTube, don't go to your buddy Trooper's channel. And I'm like, look, just stick the cigar in the gun hole and go and get actual training. So you can go to TCCC.org. You can go to Dark Angel. We certified with them last year. You can go to the American Red Cross. You can go to a lot of different places, but get some familiarization from YouTube or from the interweb, and then follow it through with a class where you're really, you're pulling the thing out of the package, you're putting it on yourself, you're putting it on another human being, you're getting familiar with it, you're understanding what a tourniquet does, what it doesn't do, and then also things like hemostatic agents, so blood clotting agents. So when I packed Chuck's wound, I just took an ABD combine pad. I folded it in half. I folded it in half again, and then I just pushed it in the wound, and then I put a pressure dressing on top of it. If it was a spurting wound, I would have put Celox in it, and I would have started filling it up. But it was like the bleeding was mostly under control. I knew 911 was on the way,
And I was more worried about his mental state at that point because I knew I had enough control over that bleed that I needed to focus on his mental state at that point. So it's, every situation is going to be a little bit different, but the tourniquet is the number one thing. And then the packing gauze, whether it's hemostatic agent or not, is another thing. And then covering the wound and like Matt just did, you want to put a shit ton of pressure on the hole. You want to make sure that you want to keep the blood inside the blood sac.
Full body weight.
Yeah.
What might have happened if this was a solo accident and you're on a camping hiking trip by yourself and this happened? How would you self-treat and what would be the outcome, do you think? With no 911?
I would have absolutely donned my tourniquet and I would have focused. Again, you follow your training. So the interesting thing is a lot of times when people get shot, they don't, like Chuck didn't know it. When people's adrenaline is dumping and they get hurt, they don't always know that they're hurt. But if you know you're hurt, then you take immediate action, right? And so the scenario there, if I zip up my leg and I go as far as I can before I lose air, before I pass out, or I'm out of cell phone range. So even if I could drag myself over to where the radio or the phone is, I have no contact. The other part of preparation is before I go out to the field, I say, I'm going here. I'm going to be gone this long. I'm going to be back at this time. And if I'm not, then immediately assume something's wrong because I am going to contact you on my way back. And so what you're doing at that point is you're just setting yourself up for success that, even if I have to go 2 or 3 days and I'm just stranded out there, if you have the tourniquet properly applied and you don't have any other environmental conditions, the second risk other than infection is going hypothermic or hyperthermic, meaning you got too cold or too hot, then you're probably going to survive 1 to 3 days. If you have any optimistic conditions around you other than your injury, you can go 1 to 3 days alone, depending on the injury. If it's a limb injury, but you just have to stay focused and you just have to believe that you're going to get through it. So main thing would be if I shot myself for whatever reason, I applied a tourniquet, help wasn't on the way, I would crawl into my truck or trailer, try to get to some shade. I would try to drag myself to a place that would optimize my cover and temperature control. And then I would just think happy thoughts until I died or until help arrived. Because sometimes your only 2 options.
Yeah, this is an important for boaters. It goes under the rubric of a sail plan, and that means your wife knows I will call you before 10 o'clock tonight. If I don't call you before 10 o'clock tonight, something has gone drastically wrong. Call the Coast Guard. Like I will be back at the boat ramp, because this is what often happens is if something bad happens, but the wife doesn't even get the search going for another 12 or 24 hours.
Yeah, there's a big difference between being a half an hour late coming home from work and being a half an hour late when you've been out sailing or you're out somewhere and you're not being heard from when you should be heard from. That's an immediate cause for concern. And you have to explain that to law enforcement too. My husband is an experienced sailor. He's a Navy SEAL. We have a protocol. This isn't just some random thing. I might be fucking the bartender down the street. We have a fucking protocol that we follow, and he's deviated from that protocol. This is a serious incident. He needs help. So you have to explain that.
That's why you file a flight plan. It's the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. You're not filing a flight plan for anything other than you telling the FAA and the I can't think of what they're called anyway.
But the plane's got to be on the ground and reporting in.
Yeah,
it's only got this much fuel.
Yeah, and if you don't, especially if you're going over mountains, you want to file a flight plan because you never know, right? And if the plane's overdue, it's going to be a few hours before anybody notices anyway. And yeah, there used to be FAA controlled service centers that you would call into and say, hey, can you open and close my flight plan? I'm on the ground X. And they're like, do you want me to open the next one? No, not yet, blah, blah, blah. Then you get on the radio and you get in the air and you tell them to activate the other one. Away you go. It used to be a really good system, but you just never know, right? I mean, even if you have the best maintenance of your airplanes, shit still happens. I mean, yeah, I can tell you, yeah.
But this kind of accident can happen in your garage It can happen at the range, and somewhere in your mind, you have to have that immediate action drill in your head. And even if it's an improvised tourniquet, a belt, something.
Yeah.
Stop the bleeding.
Yeah, bleeding, and temperature control are the two things. So you lose more people from hyperthermia than you do from injuries a lot of times, like when there's a mass casualty incident and then the patients are just lingering and they're unable to care for themselves. They lose a lot of fluid. There's a major temperature change, and then they expire because their body's under so much stress. Some of that's conditional stress that you could have mitigated, with like a space blanket or with a little bit of hydration. And the other thing with the tourniquet, and the Russians learned this, is if like in the situation where you're out in the field or you're on the boat, oh, something bad happened, I got to put a tourniquet on, me or someone else. And now you're out there adrift, all day, and it's hot. You're sweating. You're losing fluid out of your body. Well, what do you think your body's doing underneath that tourniquet? That tourniquet's loosening up on you. And then the other direction of that is in when like combat medic training. I wasn't a combat medic. I was a cavalry guy, but I went to the combat medic thing. They gave us the bag to carry as like the intermediate medic guys. But the protocol was to immediately start IV fluids. So catheter IV, you get a heat stroke, catheter IV, you're shot, catheter IV, you're not feeling well that day, you're having an issue with your relationship with Christ, catheter IV. And the problem is when people are injured and they lose blood, and then you put a whole bunch of fucking saline in their system, they puff up, and there's a name for it. I don't remember the name for it, but it was killing people, right? So you have too much fluid. And if you have too much fluid after a tourniquet, now the tourniquet becomes way too tight. You have an amputation risk, or they don't get any fluid and they're losing fluid and nobody checks the tourniquet. It loosens up and they're bleeding out in the back of an ambulance on the way back to the rear, and then you get there and they're dead.
And so, with you guys out in the desert, it's also like you were talking about the temperature control. When you're edging up towards heat stroke, which can be part of all of this, it's what do you call it? Pathologies that are stacked on top of each other. So you're all focused on one thing, but the other thing is going to kill you. So getting the guy to the shade and hosing him down, dragging him into the creek, pouring your bottled water on him. All of these things, you can't just focus on one thing, tunnel vision. You have to be trying to keep a wider aperture picture of what's going on, because you stop the bleeding, but now the guy's stroking out.
And for a sea captain or the senior guy on a vessel, or the one guy that's like the designated medic guy on a team, you're required to maintain your proficiency in all these perishable skills, right? But it's like map reading or radios or anything else. There's a lot of things that go along with that pre-hospital care. And I don't consider myself a medic or like a high level dude. I just work with a lot of sick people, so I'd probably know more than the average person. But as far as like bleed stop, everybody should know how to put on a tourniquet. Everybody should know how to treat a gunshot wound. Everybody should have a little bit of training on, well, what if the gunshot wound's in a place where a tourniquet can't go? What do I do? So if you just know that much information and just enough information to understand, again, wound care, temperature, what's called MARSH. The simple way of just say airway, breathing, bleeding, temperature control. But MARSH is the new acronym. But just airway, breathing, circulation, temperature control. So just remember those things, and then call for help. We're still in a world where we have 911, unless you're on a boat, right, or you're camping. But your average everyday mom dropping her kid off at daycare, guy going to the mall, some redneck at a barbecue, your friend brings an unsafe weapon in a holster. You need to have basic training, basic kit that's immediately accessible to you, at least somewhere where where it is, like where the fire extinguisher is, and then you will fall back on your training. And I think everybody on this call has seen guys, including themselves, that they went to some fucking training shit and they're like, fuck this, right? And then it's repetition, and then something bad happened and everybody just fucking clicked in because they had that training to fall back onto. So you do have to, you are responsible for a minimum amount
of life-saving training. Even if you don't understand all the things, you don't need to understand how to put in sutures. We can't do that anyway, or, give an IV or open heart surgery, whatever. Just airway, breathing, bleeding, circulation, temperature control. Just very basic shit. And if you have that, you're going to save yourself and you're going to save somebody else.
And there's another aspect of this, which is maybe more hard to quantify, that comes under kind of like a personal leadership part of this. You might not be a paramedic. You might have only the most basic knowledge about putting a tourniquet on a guy's arm or leg with a belt. But in a lot of situations, everybody is going to freak out or freeze. It's like you're dealing with suddenly a herd of sheep that, and nobody knows what to do. Everybody's waiting for somebody to take control. Everybody's waiting for a command voice. You may be the only person there that can do it. So you have to be able to rise. Not everybody can do it, but, and maybe on one day you can't and somebody else does, but somebody's got to take overall charge of the scene and say, you call 911, you go get that car and drive it over here. Because you might not be a paramedic, but somebody's got to get the sheep to unfreeze and start moving, towards a solution. So
you're right, Matt. My biggest fear is that I'm the one that gets hurt and I'm surrounded by fucking retards and then I die. And I think that's the fear that most of us have.
We're all going to die. I'm 69.
I die with some blue-haired fucking teenager filming me, watching me bleed out, live streaming it on her fucking blue wave TikTok or whatever. That's the end of me.
If we can be the guy that's in court in the witness stand and they're saying, why did you say that and why did you say that? I'll just say the guy's still alive. Okay, it's like yeah, a lot of bad stuff happened. But somebody had to take control. Maybe I made a wrong decision. It's like Derek Chauvin and George Floyd. One guy's like 6'3" and the other guy's like 5'8". It's like one guy's huge. Somebody had to actually do something, and sometimes it doesn't work out the way you wish, and you're in jail. But you can't just use that as an excuse to say, I'll never step forward and be a leader. There's times that you just have to step forward and take charge and be a leader, come what may. Whatever happens, it happens. But if you're looking at the rest of the sheep herd, waiting for another sheep to take charge, it's not going to happen. Somebody has to take control. So it's not about a lot of it is about having the medical training, the trauma training, but a lot of it is a mental state of if shit goes sideways and everybody's running in circles in panic, you've got to be able to take charge of that group, at least get them oriented and start giving people tasks. Then they'll react. Then they'll act. If you just tell somebody, you go over there and get the fire extinguisher, you've started. But so many situations you'll see, you just have sheep running around.
Part of that's just because our culture's been so ingrained to call 911 and just step back. Right. I mean, it's one of the things that
step back and film it for your TikTok video.
Well, that's the newest thing, right? But when I went through Combat Lifesaver the first time, I'll never forget that, when you do the tube down the nose and the whole 9 yards and you're going through all that, you realize that I would never take the initiative to do this. And it's one of the first things they tell you is you're never going to have the initiative naturally to go and step in. It's just what's been brought out of our society. So I would recommend two things. Number one, you have to stay calm yourself, right? Because it's not just adrenaline from the situation. It's adrenaline from the fact there's probably somebody that you're triaging, which makes it even more stressful. And then I
will admit, Steve, that did fuck with me, because that's the first time that I've been in that dire of a situation with another human being that I know, care about, have had a relationship with, and they're literally bleeding out through my hands. So if you're just there's a factor there.
And that person that but are not like the significant other of, the significant other might be right there panicking. And you have to be able to focus in, dial in, and go to work, even though there's somebody that knows the person better, that's like saying, "What are you doing?"
Mm.
You know, it can be very difficult.
And the stress adds up, right? When you, especially, you know, when you're already in a high energy situation. I mean, I can't liken it to what it's like in, you know, outside the wire in Iraq when somebody gets hit, because it's already adrenaline anyway outside the fence. But I remember very distinctly how self-care becomes just as important as caring for the other person, because you can't go into shock because your friend's in shock. And I've seen it happen. And it's it's easy to do. Like you said,
Yeah.
the circumstances of the situation, you know, and you're really close to this person, they get shot, you know, you're not going to save them, and you can, you know, you can drop right into shock too.
Yeah. In the airplane, you got to put your own mask on first.
Yeah, it's exactly. That's a great analogy, Matt. Why didn't I think of that? So, all right, let's move on to I want to talk Iran, because that seems to be.
But I could talk about this all night, because this is like where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
And this is not a hypothetical exercise. This happened to one of our guys, you know, in like the memory that's right here, the visual cortex memory that's right here. And this can be a life-altering wound.
Yeah, that's the other piece of it too, right? Is that you know, your friend got off lucky. Yeah, I mean, he's still going to have some residual, because they still got to get that bullet out, right? And you don't know how much damage has been done to the muscle. That's the other thing, folks. You know, gunshot wounds, unless you've seen them firsthand, you've experienced them firsthand, I can tell you that it's a hell of a lot more stressful than you think it is. On TV, they show, you know, a hole and spitting out some blood. It's not like that.
Yeah. And
It's not like that at all.
And 2 weeks later, the detective is back on the job.
Yeah.
Senator Bob Dole, who was wounded in Italy, I think Monte Cassino or somewhere, you know, he had like a pencil in his hand for the rest of his life because his arm didn't work. So we're talking life-altering wounds potentially.
Yeah, and for anybody that's interested, it was an XTP Hornady XTP hollow point. From the size of it, looked like the 115 grainer, not the 124. So point blank, muzzle blast into the leg, spinning doily of razor blade fuckery all the way down, you know, to the fucking ankle. So he's.
Can I interject one thing?
Yeah.
When after you're done, Troop, I didn't mean to stop you.
Oh no, I'm good.
I mean, I haven't dealt with the gunshot wounds, but I've dealt with rescuing people out of a river one time with mouth to mouth, and plenty of traumatic airplane situations. And the one thing that occurred to me while you guys were, what I was catching, we finished up with our airplane, was that when you have traumatic scenarios, like you got the victim person, and I think you guys covered that in depth, is that when you're dealing with this come down off the stress yourself, like being the person that's providing help, or you've dealt with a serious situation, your body experiences all these physiological reactions, like your legs might shake, you know, your hands will shake, you'll get nervous. And the thing I think that's important for people is to realize that's all normal. And when you have that kind of reaction, don't let it freak yourself out more. It's just your body coming off the adrenaline yourself. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah. You know, 30, 40 years ago, I bought this little tiny book, Masad Ayub, like Christian Lebanese guy, big shooter. It's called After the Shooting. I forget what it's called, but he was really excellent at this. He said, these are things physiologically that you can expect during like a high stress, like shooting incident. So don't just expect this. If you expect this, you can almost cut the effect in half. Tunnel vision. You're going to only look at the guy that's shooting at you and not the other guy over there that's shooting at you. Ringing in the ears, like physiological, ringing in the ears. You can't hear your partner saying, look out, watch that guy. And your fingers become all thumbs. So your fine motor coordination is going to go. So don't practice so many gun drills that are really super intricate, because under pressure, when you're being shot at, you're going to lose a lot of that. So do the real simple stuff. But yeah, these are physiological effects that are going to happen And if you know they're going to happen, they're not going to affect the outcome as badly.
I want to kind of pin onto that, and especially that's a good point. Colonel Johnson is most of us are kind of stress inoculated already. I've had hundreds of stress exposures, like all of us have like different amounts of stress. And so we're better suited to deal with some of the major type of stresses like, oh, your buddy just got shot. Most people haven't had that kind of stress inoculation yet. So what Matt is talking about is, what Masab Ayub is talking about is that massive amount of adrenaline, like, holy fuck, this just happened. And then what Colonel Murray talks about in the, what's the book, Accept the Situation That You're In, is like,
Deep
all right,
survival.
yeah, this is where we're at now. We're going to go forward from this fucking point right now. And that's why I think I told Chuck that too. He's like, oh, fuck. I'm like, we're going forward from this point. But I've had to deal with a lot of stress. So I was probably, a lot more calm. I'm sure if you're like a firefighter, a paramedic guy, and you see the shit every single fucking day, you're like 5 tours in Afghanistan type of guy, and you see the shit every single fucking day. Your stress tolerance is going to be a lot higher, and your stress response is going to be a lot lower, even if it's 10 or 20 years later, than somebody who's, like a librarian, and then all of a sudden they're like, fuck, I went to a class and I have to get my tourniquet because I think this man's bleeding, shit, and then, but even a person like that is going to fall back on their training if they have the motivation to do so. Like, Matt said, that people unfortunately don't have an obligation to act. So you have to have an internal duty, your internal Bushido fucking warrior code needs to motivate you to act, and then act competently, calmly, and deliberately if you're going to act.
Yeah, the people like watching or in the comments or that see this later, all of the ones that have experienced these super high stress experiences, I know they're not rolling their eyes because they're like nodding and saying, yeah, that's right. But for the people that have not, that have lived very blessed lives, and I'm not calling them sheep. It's just like, look, you've lived a great life. It's been good. But when something like this happens, it could be a motor vehicle accident. It could be a shooting. It could be a snake bite on a hike. A car goes into the river, and people are like, bubbles are coming up. You're going to look around and you're going to see that most people are not reacting. They're waiting for somebody else to take charge. And if anything we get out of this whole conversation, yeah, be a paramedic, know about a tourniquet. That's great. You can't wait for John Wayne. You can't call 911 and just stand around. If there's nobody else taking charge and you're looking around and everybody's just like, not reacting properly, either they're looking at their phone or they're in hysterics, you have to be the one that stands up. And it doesn't matter if you're a paramedic or you're not. You have to be the one that stands up and it starts directing the scene. You can't wait for John Wayne. You got to be the John Wayne. And everybody that's been in these high stress situations knows what I'm talking about. You can't wait for somebody else to take charge. If somebody else is taking charge before you, great. And they sound like they know what they're doing. And that guy says, go get the fire extinguisher, go get the fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
But if nobody is, you got to do it.
And there's the other side of that is, remember, there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, there's wrong actions, but the key thing is movement, right? You get people moving, you get things going, and then things
break the ice, break the freeze.
Things will fall in place. And I can't stress enough how much, because I fucking knew. I just fucking knew as soon as Troop's wife told me what was going on. The first place I walked right out there, I'm like, dude, are you okay? Because I knew exactly what was going on. And it's, you can't be in the military, especially if you're in a combat arms unit. You can't be in a unit like that and not have accidents and not see people get injured, misfires, you name it, dud rounds, you name it, the gamut. And
Yeah,
Training accidents
the
happen.
vehicle
all the time.
rolls off the canal into the river, and suddenly
the
everybody's underwater.
Yep.
It happens all the time. Helicopter hits the wire.
Yep, all the time. And that's the thing that's the other thing too is, what you're hearing is experience here. We've all been through this, and this instance is exactly why I continue to harp on Lawrence Gonzalez's book, Deep Survival, because this shows you how fast the situation develops and why it's so important to stay in the moment and make decisions. Because our natural instinct is to go, shit, that's really bad. Somebody else should take care of that. Or this shouldn't be happening to me. That's the first one. This shouldn't be happening, or this shouldn't be happening to me. If you stay in that denial, you die.
Yeah.
Full stop. You die. And I'll relay a situation where my training kicked in, and I was coming back, and I was in Washington State, coming back at night. I had read the weather. I had my niece, my brother, and my nephew in my airplane, and we were coming back. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and the wind started picking up, and I was listening to ATIS, and they're saying, wind gusts to this. It was right down the runway. So I'm thinking, okay, no problem. I'll just, straight in approach, no problem. What I didn't count on was that there was extreme weather over the channel I was flying over, and it was literally pushing my airplane down, and I was at full power, and the aircraft would not respond to the controls.
So
And
747?
No, shit,
No.
no, it was a Beechcraft.
Okay.
And I'm doing 150 knots, and I'm thinking if I push my nose down, I'm gonna get some airspeed. But that wasn't my problem. My problem was power and lift. And so I just rode it out and kept the power up and lifted the nose up a little bit. And eventually we came out of it. But I lost almost 1,000 feet of altitude between the time I figured out what was going on and the time that I was able to recover. And I could have panicked, but there was really not much I could do. I figured the worst comes to worst, I'll put it in the water. But you're making decisions all the time. You're assessing what's going on. You're making decisions the whole time. You're not resting on your laurels saying, okay, everything's okay. It's the next thing. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And you just keep going. I'm sure it's the same in a boat, Matt. When you get into weather, I'm sure it's exactly the same.
Yeah, except the boat floats and it has a motor and sails, and it's not an airplane where, if things go wrong, you're not making it the next 2 minutes. So yeah,
what's a glide path? Yeah, Colonel Johnson, what's a glide path on a 737? Like you get 200 people in an airplane.
You got actually airliners have pretty good glide paths. Actually, they're better than most light singles. Most airliners have a glide ratio of about 17 to 1 or so, maybe 18 to 1, that's because they're made for such fuel efficiency. The more advanced, like the 787, I think our glide ratio is probably on the order of 20 to 1. But like most gliders, just to give you an idea, like I was just working on my glider, it has a glide ratio of 50 to 1. And a lot of gliders, typically once you start getting into the 25 to 1 or better glide ratio, then you're in the world of a glider. So airliners are almost in the efficiency of a glider, but and the glide ratio is for 1 foot down for how many feet forward for 1 foot down. So 25 to 1 means you go 25 feet forward and 1 foot down if you're at your best glide speed for that airplane. And I could go, on your situation, Steve, I could add a bunch of thoughts, but I think for people to think about, it's just, like everybody's saying, that you got to get off the X, make decisions that are going to start making people get better. And you can think of like there's the ABCs concept for first aid. I'm sure Troop could lecture us on that, airway, breathing, and circulation. I was thinking while you guys were talking, there's a book by Grossman. I can't remember his first name, but it was an Army colonel called
David.
Yeah.
Grossman.
and he wrote the book On Combat, and he also wrote the book On Killing. Now,
Yeah.
I tried to read the On Killing book, and it was too gruesome. I couldn't get through it. But the On Combat book was all about the physiological reactions of people in combat, and it matched everything you guys were saying. And it also matches with the situations I've experienced as a pilot, and when I've experienced first aid situations that were pretty, serious, and that, the physiological reactions, like you might under combat, you're probably going to pee in your pants or, poop on yourself or whatever. And not, all those things are just natural things are going to happen. And so don't let those make you freak out. But I don't know. I don't have anything else to add at this second.
There's a really excellent TV series going back more than a decade. So there's like probably more than 100 episodes called Air Disaster. I think it's on like, Nat Geo or other channels. And they look at air crashes, and sometimes it's great, like, Schellenberger landing in the Hudson, right? Where everybody walks away. But they take an air disaster and they find out, like, this screw wasn't maintained in the elevator in the tail, and that's why everything went haywire. But what they really dissect is the crew management, and that's what's really changed probably in the last 20 or 25 years. There was a period where, like, if the captain is steering, the co-pilot's there in case he has a heart attack. That's it. The captain is doing everything, making all the decisions. And they discovered there's so many situations where the captain is overwhelmed. He has too much input, or maybe he's not a great pilot and he's making bad decisions. At what point does the co-pilot take over? And there's air crew that are like responding with the personnel and the passengers. And that it's such a great show because it's what do people do under panic situations where 99% of people will just absolutely, completely panic. They can't figure out why the plane is suddenly diving. 99% of people, you're done right there. And so you've got a cockpit team, pilot, co-pilot, sometimes engineers or other cabin personnel. But how did they work through this situation? How did they avoid? Sometimes they get into a mental block and they're not looking at the right instrument. They're fixed on one thing, and they're figuring out why doesn't the autopilot kick in, but they're not looking at another instrument, and the plane goes into the ocean or hits the mountain. But the show is really great. Forget about whether it's about airplanes or race cars or sailboats or just your car on the highway. It's about how do people react under extreme stress, and how do you increase the odds of success in an emergency? What are the things that are in common with these things that fail? What happens when things work? And in airlines, this has been, I think, under the rubric of what's it called, cockpit management,
Crew resource management.
Yeah, crew resource management.
What I was going to add to that is, like, one of the things that we really focus on in our training at our airline is, and military too, is in a crisis scenario, whatever, it's really important that you don't have everybody all focusing on the one broken light bulb or the one broken thing. It's
Right.
like the key is you got to have someone always flying the airplane. Someone else is trying to fix the airplane and manage the
and
situation.
somebody looking out the windows.
Yes. And so I think we can take that down to trauma situations that everyday people are going to see in accidents and stuff like that. And if you're the person who's thrust into like a leadership role, is looking at it in terms, or just on your own reacting, and like you could say, okay, this person's getting taken care of by this person, they're doing a tourniquet. This other person is over here and they're bleeding out still. I'm going to go work on them. At least having the SA, the situational awareness, to look at the whole scenario and be like, are there any other things that are not getting taken care of that need to get taken care of in this scenario? I could see that, being a big issue with car accidents and things where, someone else might have gotten hurt that no one knew about, or someone else is bleeding out. They didn't even realize it because of adrenaline. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, what happened to Bob? And there's a pool of blood and he's over in the corner, so that I think you said the other day, Troop, in your video talking about checking out each over to make sure, did anybody else get hit? You know, I thought that was a really good point. And how we can kind of take the crew resource management idea and turn it into a teamwork idea, and how to help people, you know, help a team work through a traumatic situation
Yeah,
better.
that's why I love that show called Air Disasters, and it's not like, you know, I don't care about airplanes or what happens. You know, it's about under sudden extreme stress. People are doing the same job they do every day, commuting to work on the train, whatever it is. All of a sudden, you're thrust into like a life or death situation where alarms are going off, and you know the horizon is going like tilt, and you're steering this way and nothing's working. How do you figure that out and work through it? That's what's so like really excellent about the show. It's all about how do humans react under sudden extreme stress, you know, and what works and what doesn't work. And that's where that whole crew management thing came in, when they figured out you just can't let the Korean captain of the airliner steer it into the mountain. You know, you've got to, at some point, you got to step in and say, can't do that.
So I'll end this on a happy note. So my daughter was here, my favorite oldest daughter. I have a favorite oldest daughter, a favorite oldest son, and a favorite youngest son.
There are only
And
two.
I have three kids. So when I was younger, you know, my buddies and I would go out in the desert, drink beer, shoot guns, wreck 4x4s, and just do crazy shit. And Amanda grew up with all of that. And so on one side, I got a woman that's crying outside because this big traumatic thing happened. And on the other side, we had just brought in all the food for the barbecue, and it was in the training room. And, you know, somebody left the door open and there was a couple flies in there. So I have one of those electronic fly swatter things. And I told Amanda, go get it, you know, cover up the food and stuff, and, you know, secure the food. And then Chuck got here with a trailer. So this shit happened. I'm bringing Chuck in. This is like all this fucking shit's going on. And Amanda turns around and she goes, "Daddy, is he shot?" I'm like, "Yup." And she's like, "Oh, pow!" And then she hits a fly, like, you know, it looks like daddy shit, like he has it under control. I mean, didn't even fucking blink, right? And I was like, you might want to get the food out of here. So
she was prepared. She was prepared.
She's seen so much of my bullshit, you know, when I was younger. We just did reckless fucking things, and it's just amazing, like how people respond, you know, to, like you said, the witnesses, how some of them you have to worry about going into shock, some of them get in the way, some of them are like the screaming lady that all she can do is scream and bring everybody's anxiety up, you know.
Yeah, this might seem unrelated, maybe less to people out in Arizona, but Robert Kennedy, you know, Jr., he had a video about snakes over the last couple of days, and one was like responding to a rattlesnake, where he's got like a little, like a fish net. I used to use a fork stick kind of thing.
Yeah, we did the fork sticks.
Yeah, but he's like, oh, there's and he called it a rattlesnake rescue, and it's like how to just deal very calmly with a situation that would have 98% of people absolutely hysterical. And it's like, look, I know what the snake is. I know what I am. I'm going to have at the end of this, the snake is in this bucket, period. Calm. And it's all training and preparation. Mental preparation.
Muscle memory too. Don't forget muscle memory. So yeah, it's funny how that works, isn't it? So, all right. Do we want to move on, or do you want to stay on this topic?
I think we rode it into the ground.
I needed to replace my my kit anyway. If you guys are wondering what I carry on me, we'll close it on that. So a cat tourniquet, packing gauze, either use Narcat, North American Rescue, and it doesn't have to be hemostatic agent, but just any kind of packing gauze, and any kind of compression dressing. I really don't like the Israeli dressings, because that little plastic thing, I did a video last night, I literally pulled the cup right off an Israeli dressing. I just don't like those. And I'm trained on standard field pressure dressings anyway. You know, the ones we wore, I'm sure in the Navy they had the same ones, you know, the one field pressure dressing on the LBE. So, but those are the three things right here.
But it's like if you're in a dehydration situation, it's better to drink ditch water and survive to get to the hospital with bugs in parasites than to die of dehydration. It's also better to pack the wound with a dirty towel than to let the guy bleed out. Don't be looking around for like the sterile,
Yeah, but I mean that's why they have Z-fold gauze though, because like a normal gauze, if you take it and you pack it, and then the rest of it's going to unroll like toilet paper. Z-fold, it's like an accordion. So when you pull it, you can hold it in one hand, and then you can just start loading the wound with it, and it's not rolling off.
But if nobody has actual products, if you're just out in the woods, a pile of leaves and pressure is better than letting the guy bleed out while you're looking for something sterile. You got to stop the bleeding no matter what. That's going to kill the guy much faster than infection from what you put into the wound.
Yeah. Circulation, bleeding, airway, temperature control.
A t-shirt, anything,
All right. I think we beat that one to death.
I'm thinking so. I'm thinking so. All right, let's move on to Iran. So it sounds like, so let me set the stage for this so everybody knows how my weekend went. So on Friday night, my email, my phone, PMs blew up, and we were going to attack Iran over the weekend, and it was going to lead us to World War III, and they were going to nuke Israel, and I can't remember the last one, but I've gotten to the point with this whole Iran thing that like every Friday there's a deal. Every Monday we declare victory and we start shooting at each other again, or at least there's some kind of a skirmish.
And people make a lot of money over the weekend.
Yeah. So please, this is my request. Please, in the future, unless you are in the U.S. intelligence apparatus and you can definitively tell me, which you shouldn't be telling me, which means don't tell me that we're going to attack Iran, please don't tell me we're going to attack Iran. So I will let it happen. I don't think this is going to go away anytime soon. There's too many people making money off of this. There's too many parts to this and I'm with Michael Yon. I think there's a bigger plan here to architect famine. And I think that's what this is all about. So I'll just leave it there. Matt, I'll let you go because I know you got lots of things to say on this.
No, it's COVID was a good run. They could show how everybody will inject themselves with poison if you tell them that they can't go to college, in September, or you can't get on the airplane to go to Italy this summer. They'll inject themselves with poison. So that was a good trial run. The R factor of like fatalities from it was like basically similar to the flu. This time they've got the energy. They can cudgel us with with an energy shortage and rationing, which I think is coming. Trump saying that as soon as we make this deal, the price is going to go back down and gasoline's going to be cheaper than ever. That's complete bullshit. I highly recommend a podcast on Daniel Davis Deep Dive yesterday with an oil industry guy named Art Berman. This is not going to be snapping back like a rubber band. That the oil coming out of the Middle East, best case, will probably never be more than like 60% of it was before. There's been damage done, just like if going back to the bleeding situation, if somebody is like shot and loses 20% of their blood, they survive, but they're not going to run the marathon tomorrow, right? They're not going to be at work tomorrow, and we're losing a big percentage of the world oil, fertilizer, gas, all of it, and it's not going to just snap back. So when you see the market price based on futures, which is like people betting against each other, it's actually not the real price of oil, and we're probably going to see by the late fall, early next year, the true price of oil, when there's real price discovery, it's going to be over $150, $180 a barrel, and we're not ready for that. And we're getting to the tank bottom in a lot of countries. If you look at a whole country's aggregate of fuel inventory, what's in all their tanks, the ships at the docks, and their fuel farms. They like to keep it between, like, you don't want to go over 100%. You can't. The ships are coming in. There's nowhere to put it. So everything's based on, it's going between 80%, 40%, 30%, maybe hits 90%, but you're staying in that range. We're getting down to like below the 20% in a lot of countries. America will be later than other countries, but Australia, Asia, a lot of European countries, the propaganda media can cover it over and just say everything's fine. Look, okay, the price of fuel went up a little bit. It's fine. But what they're not showing is that the actual national tank for these countries is getting down to the dead zone, to the tank bottom, where when you get down below 20, 10%, you can't even use the last 20 or 10% because it's sludge, and it'll just block all the pipes going all through the system. And in the output side, in the Persian Gulf, these countries that have been, there's nowhere to put. Everybody's focused on Iran. When are they going to like hit their oil fields be wrecked because there's nowhere to put the fuel? In our media, it's like, well, what isn't that happening in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the Gulf states? It's happening all over the Persian Gulf. So damage, very serious damage is being done to the infrastructure that'll be very long lasting. It's not like you turned down your thermostat and you turned up your thermostat. You turned off your lights, you're turning back on your lights. And the Art Berman in the podcast with Daniel Davis, he compared it to something that's more understandable in your house. If you have like major pipe work done, there's a leak in your front yard and you have to turn off your water. When you finally turn it back on, air's coming out and it's coming in spurts. It's not like just flowing through. Multiply that effect times 1,000 for hundreds of miles of oil fields across the Middle East, which have been for years maintaining a kind of a pressure for years. You can adjust a little bit, you can turn it up, turn it down, but it's flowing through. It's keeping all of the pipes full. In big cities where the plumbing is 100 years old, they get to a collapse state where these iron pipes that were built like 1890s to 1910s, Philadelphia, New York, the water that goes to your tap is flowing through basically a rust ring of the earth. Okay, the pipe that was laid there in 1880 or 1890 is just a rust ring. It's just water pressure is holding that rust ring against the earth. When there's a blowout, something happens, and the pressure is reduced to zero, the pipe, which is really just a rust ring held against the dirt by pressure, collapses. You can't just turn that back on. You've got to now rebuild that whole system. And that's what's happening in the Middle East when you aren't just staying between that 80% and 40% pressure level, you've turned it off. A lot of this is having damage done to it, permanent damage. So this guy, Art Berman, says, we're not going to get back to 100%. So just the whole world oil supply, gas and oil, is like down, depending on who you talk to, 15%, which is like, oh, I just got shot and I've only lost 15% of my blood, but I'll be fine. I'll be at work tomorrow. No, you won't. We're going into a crisis. We're living off of what's in the supply, which fluctuates normally between 80 and 30. We're going down below 30, 20, 10. This is like the pipes in New York and Philadelphia when suddenly there's no pressure and the pipe collapses. You can't just say, that's fine, next week we're going to put full pressure back, because that pipe was almost a notional pipe. And in the Middle East, that whole infrastructure that's been going for decades and decades, it's been kept in that margin, where there's a safe flow margin. So even if tomorrow there's a peace deal, these tankers start going out, they're not all going to be able to stampede out like it's the Oklahoma land rush, like go. Somebody fires a gun, waves a flag, and here comes, 3,000 tankers out of the Persian Gulf. That can't happen. First, none of these shipping companies are going to say go when Iran and America say there's a deal, because the shipping companies are going to say, we still think there's mines there. So we want some assurity. We want we want to have everybody tell us that there's no more mines. So that you're adding, 3-4 weeks on top of the go date. Then all of these tankers are going to have to kind of queue up, because they can't all just leave at the same time. So the 1,000+ tankers in the Persian Gulf are going to be dribbling out over months and months. If you're in Australia, Japan, Asia, Europe, and you're getting down to 20%, 15%, 10% tank bottom apocalypse, it's not like tomorrow when the deal is made, a ship will arrive and get you back up. So we're in a situation where even if the ship started leaving tomorrow, it would be 4 to 6 weeks before the input starts going back in to fill these tanks. And that's probably not going to happen, because Iran's not going to agree with everything that Trump wants. They're not going to give up the nuclear material. They're not going to give up control of the strait. So this is going to drag on for weeks and weeks at best. We're going to get into a situation where it's not a question of how much did you pay for gasoline or diesel at the pump. It's going to be a situation of, we don't have any more. Farmers are already hitting this with fertilizer. We don't have it. I don't know how to farm without, this amount of fertilizer. I don't know how to do it. And then you get to the next situation, which is, I can't buy the diesel for my combine tractor. I don't have it. It's not a question of inflation and how much does it cost. It's a question of, we can't get it. It's just not here. In Europe and Asia, it's just not here. So we're going to hit a wall here, and you can say, well, Matt, but that's only, it's only been like, 80 days, 90 days of a cutoff.
Well, it's climate lockdowns in a different way, right? Mike and I know you and Mike have talked about this too. Ferris and I talk usually once a week for a couple hours, and I see it as just another form of lockdown, right? They run the fuel supply out, and then first it's, only go to work if you have to, save the fuel for those industries that need the fuel. And then
this is already happening in Asia.
Yeah.
Matt, did you read that news story about Del Monte in California, the cannery they went under because their input cost for steel for the cans was too high? And then the capex for was it 450,000 acres of peach groves, peach orchards?
That's Del
California.
Monte. Yeah, Del Monte.
They
just factories.
Yeah, they just said just tear the trees down. 450,000
mature
we'll help
orchards. You tear the trees down.
Yeah. So I was blown away by that. And Del Monte is huge. I mean, everybody has a can of Del Monte something, in their pantry, corn or whatever. And so they just went under. They're like, we can't afford to can the shit. The growers that were providing the peaches in this case, they're like, the input costs are too high to maintain this. We don't have any buyers. Just wreck the whole thing. Just turn it off. As what Jan was saying, there's a cascading, second, third order effects of this are already happening in America.
Yeah, a word that people should really focus on is leverage, and leverage up and leverage down. Before green became like ecology and global warming, the green revolution was, we can now get 3 times more output of an acre of food, because we've got like better seeds. We have diesel to run big tractor combines, and we have all this fertilizer. So we can now feed 8 billion people on this planet because of from the 50s to the 70s was called the Green Revolution. Okay, nothing to do with global warming. The Green Revolution. That's leverage. That means 8 billion people are fed out of the same amount of acres as 3 billion 50 years ago. Okay, but if you yank out the diesel fuel and the seeds aren't being delivered and there's no fertilizer, and we go back to 1950 level of agricultural output globally, we can't feed 8 billion people. So you can, it's like, okay, well, that's all right. It'll work its way out. The ships will be coming, fertilizer will be coming. That's fine. But, if you can like hold somebody underwater and just say, look, I'm going to let you out of the water in 10 minutes. Just hold your breath for 10 minutes. Well, you can't. I mean, in 3 minutes, you're dead. It's okay. I'm going to lift you out of the bathtub in 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah, but I can't hold my breath for 10 minutes.
I find myself wondering, like, there's so many parallels between the Iran situation and Ukraine, I think, in some ways. Like, there was a big thing this week about how the Ukrainian oligarchs are all bidding on, luxury yachts. And because there's so much money laundering going on.
Billions.
And it's these oligarchs, they're making so much money off this war. There's no incentive for them to end the war because they're able to launder so much money out of it and then sell things on the black market and everything else.
And they don't care. They don't care. The human cost.
Exactly. And
that's the shit they scrape off their boot.
Yes. And we're seeing the same thing in Iran with the trading, around the peace war cycle every weekend.
Well,
but it also matches into the depopulation thing. And it also matches, I think, into the whole, climate cataclysm, culmination point we've talked about. And it's almost like, it's like what I've seen when our CEOs in America wanted to go Chapter 11. All of a sudden we were making money, and then they spent $1.5 billion on capital expenditures, and suddenly you saw new furniture, new ground equipment, new everything for the airline, so they could run it into the red and then say, "Oh, we got to go Chapter 11. It's bank. We're taking your pensions and everything else." If you apply that same logic to the world, it's like they want to make the whole world go Chapter 11.
Definitely.
I think it's worse
For
than
sure.
that. I think it's way worse than that. So I was going to say, Iran's the tip of the iceberg, right? Because Israel's still active in Lebanon right now. They're bombing Beirut, and then they have the balls to say at the same time, next we're going to go after Turkey, and then we're going to go after Egypt. Yeah, with which army? Who's going to fight that war for you?
Us.
And I'll tell you who's going to. That's right, we are. Why? Because of cucks like Ted Cruz.
We're the cannon fodder.
Here's the point I'm reaching towards.
But at a higher level, it's a controlled demolition.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly where I was going with that. It's a controlled demolition, and they've already set the next stakes so that if this peg in the wall doesn't work, we'll put another peg in the wall that will work. And we'll keep putting pegs in the wall until it does happen. Yeah, and at the same fucking time, they're looting the bank vault because they know they're going to close the bank. And
this is the big macro short. This is the big short.
Absolutely.
So the big stakeholders, they can see they've got geniuses working on all of this, way smarter than us, with 10 giant screens in front of them. They know that they're approaching the cliff edge. It's like Indiana Jones in the tank, right? And there's the cliff edge. They know it's coming, and even they're telling us everything's fine. They know it's coming. So what do?
No, they're architecting it, Matt. They're not. They don't know it's coming. They're architecting it.
But it's both, because it's like a century-long credit cycle.
It's like a leech.
But we're playing out that century-long credit cycle, and the people that are still on top of this are saying, okay, we know it's going over the cliff. The tank is driving over the cliff with Indiana Jones, right? I'm not going to be on the tank. I tell everybody on the tank, everything's fine. There's no cliff. I'm getting off the tank, and I'm buying gold. I'm buying property in New Zealand and Hawaii and all over the place, farmland, so that when the tank goes over the cliff, I'll still be in a great position. And this is repeated throughout history, but this time a big difference is that leverage factor I was talking about. That in 1600 to 1650, you had Cromwell in Ireland, and you had the 30 Years' War in Europe. And everybody in those countries lived within 10 miles of where their food was grown, right? Everybody, there was no like train coming from 1,000 miles away with the food people in a city ate. Everybody grew the food and lived close to where the food was grown. And just by having a huge cataclysm in Ireland and in Europe, where growing cycle, the farming cycle is blown up for a decade. Farmers are conscripted into armies, or they're genocided, they're driven into the woods. Nobody's planting. You can have the population go down by a third. Boom. And that's when people grew their own food right where they lived. Now our food comes from thousands of miles away. It comes from ships. There's entire countries where it's just like the oil going to Korea or Japan or Australia. There's a shipload of grain going to Egypt and Pakistan. When you eat noodles in these countries, the grain wasn't grown in Egypt. It was grown on the other side of the world in Australia. When those ships stop coming, then it's like way worse and faster than what happened in the 1600s because of the leverage. We have a just-in-time economy where all around the world it's like a conveyor belt where these ships are like little like rosary beads crossing the ocean, right? Every week, another one of these ships, whether it's food or whether it's fertilizer or oil or natural gas, these ships are arriving, and it's like it becomes our life support system. Like we're in a hospital and we've got a airway, a cannula, and we just assume that that's always going to work. You plug it in on the wall in the hospital. I got oxygen, right? But suddenly, the guy that brings all those big green bottles of oxygen, he's not delivering them at the hospital. And you get to the tank bottom and it's suddenly your cannula's got no oxygen. That's what's going to happen around the world. And the leverage effect of it is going to make it happen much faster than something like the 1600s, where all they did was disrupt the farming cycle for a couple years in a row. That's when the food was grown right where you lived. We don't even live where our food is grown. When this hits, the food from 1,000 miles away, it ain't coming to the city.
It's like the idea of the opposite of economies of scale. Like you have economies of scale where you get leverage as you grow.
Leverage up, leverage down.
Right. Where the opposite of economy of scale is that it magnifies the impact as you go downhill too.
Yes, exactly. It magnifies the impact going downhill. And that's the beauty or the curse of just in time. It's super efficient. In the early first half of the 20th century, there were huge, really magnificent, humongous warehouses around all our cities with like a year's worth of Campbell's soup and cans of beans, because nobody could figure out exactly what every supermarket was going to make. So they just produced as much Campbell's soup as they could make. And it went into a giant warehouse. And sometimes the warehouse was very full. Sometimes it got lower, depending on the economy. Now there's no warehouse. It goes straight from the Campbell Soup Company to your supermarket. Perfect efficiency. That's leverage to the profitable side. It's a waste. That warehouse was a waste. That warehouse was a loss. Now we can just have instant electronic inventory at the supermarket and how much Campbell soup is produced instantly, in the same month. There's no warehouse. When that's broken,
there is now. There wasn't before. I mean, they use third-party logistics to do that, and they have storage and freezing and all that. But the other thing that goes along with this too, which is happening at this exact moment, it's not just food production, food storage, food movement, food capacity. They're also doing this to the auto parts industry and the car industry. So First Brands just shut down, I think it was last month or last year. Sorry, it's in 2025. And if you own an older car, or you own, a car that's pre-2018 when they started putting the telephonic control units in the cars, guess what? Good luck trying to get parts for them. So they're doing this across multiple industries all at the same time. And the food industry, and I can say this from being in logistics, the food industry is very, very, especially the meat packing industry and the meat industry, there's a timeline. I mean, it's a very tight timeline from the time that they harvest that that beef and bring it to the store. It's a very, very compressed timeline of how they do it. And when you disrupt one of those pieces of the chain, then the whole system falls apart, like you were saying, right? And now we're seeing, so the growing season we're in right now, that's down. U.S. farmers are down. Del Monte just went out, and now you're seeing them impact other industries. And like I said, they're architecting a lot of different things all at the same time.
Things like motor oil warnings about motor oil. So for everyone that we see is like the tip of an iceberg, I'm sure there's the whole icebergs that are not being reported.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And the reason why I bring up the car stuff is I did an article today on, the auto shutoff and why that's a big deal.
The auto
because
what?
The auto shutoff on, the auto shutoff on cars where they can shut off
Right.
your car remotely.
Yeah, your eyes are in the wrong place.
So, it's a bigger deal because they're not just going after the legislation to put the kill switch in the car. They're going after the supply chain to take away your ability to drive anything that predates any of those cars. So it drives you into the kill box. So you're in control for the food, you're in control for the oil, you're in control for the fuel, and you're in control for the car. And you have to sign up for their new car or you can't drive because you can't get parts. And people don't realize that your car has been phoning home since 2011. There was some cars in 2011 with wireless capability, and really it was 2014 on, with OnStar and some of the others. They're all listening. They're all paying attention.
Yeah, my 2007 Ford Explorer with the V8, its transmission started like not glitching, and I was like, let's buy a 10-year-old SUV. I haven't had a car on car payments in my life, and I've never had like a new car. Okay, try to be that Clark Howard guy, but I thought so I'll buy a 7 or 8 year old SUV with all these electronic controls on them. I put a new transmission into the 2007 Ford, with the V8. It runs great. And it's not something that can be shut down remotely.
My thing is, I think everybody should keep their old vehicles. Stop selling old vehicles. Like if you have to get a new vehicle for whatever reason, for your job, your profession, for some reason, keep your old one because it's going to be your backup when they turn off the tech on your new one.
Well, I addressed sorry to derail the food conversation, by the way, but you guys just jogged my memory. Part of the reason why, part of my article today was if you can have an extra vehicle, great. But the other part you got to plan for, you have to plan for spare parts, right? I'm a Ford guy. So I know exactly what breaks on those and how often they break. Power steering pumps, master cylinders, brakes go. I know exactly what goes out on them, right? So there's some flaws in that too, right? And just the same thing with hacking the vehicles. I got a bunch of message traffic because I'm doing this 6-part deal on cyber. And, part of the message traffic I got was, well, I'll just hack the car. Well, if it can be programmatically turned off, it can be remotely programmatically turned back on and you won't even know about it. So, hardware solution's great, but there's trade-offs to that too. So the point of the whole conversation is they're driving the planet towards a kill box through a variety of different lines of operation. And this conversation about food depicts graphically exactly what we've been talking about for the last 2 years, that they're moving everybody to this social scoring system kill box, and food is, and I don't know when the collision is going to happen or the culmination point. I'm thinking 2030 is their target because they keep talking about 2030, but I think it's going to happen a lot faster than that. I think it's going to be in 27.
I look at, and I'm sure there's examples all through history and on different continents. I look at 1600 with Cromwell invasion of Ireland at the same time as a 30 Years war in Europe. This is when everybody grew their own food organically. There was no Monsanto, right? No diesel for tractors, no Haber-Bosch fertilizer from natural gas. Everything was natural. you can kill a third of a population just by disrupting the planting cycle for a couple of years. A third. Imagine today where 90% of our food comes from more than 100 miles away. I mean, it's mass industrial soybean and corn from 10 states over. If that breaks down, our cities will immediately implode.
Well, here's another one for you, Matt. I want you to noodle on this one because I had this comment today that came in a DM on Substack, and that is, what if they're architecting a famine because they know that this pole shift's going to happen and they know which parts of the planet are going to be safe to be in, which is why they don't care about. They're not worried about the U.S. right now. They're worried about clearing out these other areas.
I'm not joining the pole shift groups.
I'm just saying, you think there's an agenda beyond just building a social scoring system?
I think pole shift and aliens are in the same bucket for me.
Well, that's fine, but I think they're actually targeting specific parts of the planet.
I agree. A Krakatoa volcano tomorrow could do this, or we're talking now about a great.
That's what I love about this conversation, man.
But we're talking right now in May about a great what do you call it, El Nino, a great El Nino,
right?
Like a century big El Nino, and El Nino, what it does is it F's everybody up, because the place whose ecology is based on 2 inches of rain a year, and that's
60.
normal for them, gets 60.
Yeah.
And the place that gets 60 inches of rain gets 2 inches of rain. So an El Nino on top of everything else, and you can say, all right, well, this isn't like the Zionists meeting somewhere to plan when to have an El Nino or a pole shift, or an alien disclosure. There can be something on like a, not to say biblical, but like a grand super cycle, all of the wheels, Kondratiev cycles and Elliott wave cycles and, millennial cycles. We could be coming up to something that's like a grand super cycle, which is like a multi-millennial super cycle, where all of these gears come together at a time where it's cut off the fuel, cut off the food, harvests everywhere fail. And we've got 8 billion people fed, where before Green Revolution, diesel, seeds, fertilizer, all of this, 8 billion people are being fed where maybe 3 billion could have been fed. You take out the tractors and the fertilizer and the seeds, and we're, as many people have been pointing out, we're now eating the 2025 food.
Right.
And
the 2026 food isn't getting planted.
Yeah.
Well,
and that was partly where I was going, is that I think the elite have a hell of a lot more knowledge about what's ahead of us than we do. And I think that they're planning for it, and that all these lines of operation are, I don't buy into the whole, this big social grid, the social scoring grid is going to be the only thing they're after. I think they know there's something else out there on the horizon. And
whether they know or they don't know is almost besides the point. If it's a grand super cycle, trying to find like which clique of people is like pulling levers is almost besides the point. Where it's like a tsunami coming, it's like, I don't care who like predicted it or, is right. It's a tsunami that's coming. Plan for the tsunami. It's besides the point if it's going to be a pole shift or alien disclosure.
I think that's
just
all of that alien stuff.
I think
fucking bullshit.
I mean, a way to solve it maybe is just to say that I think all of us would probably agree that modern society, modern civilization has become so fragile that almost anything could serve as a mechanism to create a collapse, whether it's a Carrington event, an EMP, mass energy shortages, pole shift. All of these things could cause a fragile system to fall apart.
And just in time is fragile.
Yes.
You're maximizing profit by making everything have no margins.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It always has been, just in time's always been fragile for so many different reasons, because it's a complex system, right? So you're reliant that the complex system is going to stay running without any hiccups, and it can absorb some shock. And we haven't had any real shock to the system in almost 40 years.
But think
Yeah.
how robust the system was in feudal Europe, or early Renaissance Europe, 1600, where 90% of what you ate was grown within 10 years of where you were born and died. And you can still wipe out a third of the population just by disrupting planting for a couple of years. Think how much more vulnerable we are now, where our food that is fuels the cities, the food that fuels the cities, the humans, is coming from. I mean, I have grapes in my refrigerator that came from Peru. That means it was on an old 747 like 2 weeks ago in Peru. That is gone. That is going to be gone. There's a nursery rhyme. I forget what video I saw this on. I don't know if anybody heard of this. It's called Peas Porridge Hot, Peas Porridge Cold, Peas Porridge in a Pot 9 days old. Anybody heard of that?
Boy, that's way old.
But everybody knows the one about ashes, ashes all fall down. That's about the bubonic plague. Ring around the rosy, that's the pustules. Ring around the rosy, ashes, ashes all fall down. You turn gray, then you die. That's what becomes a kid's rhyme. Peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold, peas porridge in a pot 9 days old is about how in the hard years, Middle Ages into the Little Ice Age, you had a pot over a fire in your house, and whatever you found, you killed a squirrel, it went in there. The peas porridge was like any kind of barley grain. You just kept adding it, and that's what you ate. You kept scraping that, add a little more water, keep scraping it, and that's how you fended off starvation. And we're like in a place where we all have refrigeration with processed frozen foods and the frozen burritos made 3 months ago in 10 states away. This can stop like that, and our cities are going to just be like cutting the power off from an aquarium. The analogy I always use, it's an aquarium. You pull the plug. Our cities are aquariums.
On that vein, I think there's going to be something related to cyber in that vein that goes along with that.
Yeah, the war of AI is going to be the data centers already smarter than already able to manipulate the politicians in a state and a county to say, I need more water and energy.
Well, they're already doing it. They're just
Right.
doing it to feed the data centers, right? I think I saw something yesterday that the Rio Grande is dry. Parts of
which
the Rio
happens,
Grande.
which happens, and the people against that meme are saying, "Oh, it goes dry a lot," but you don't put a data center next to a river that goes dry all the time. I mean,
No.
it's about the aquifer levels and so forth. Out in Utah, they're putting in things that like need Niagara Falls of water. It's like, yeah, the last farmers there also need that water, and you're going to put a data center there. So this is the war of AI, and the AI is, which we're saying is, well, it's got all the knowledge of all humanity, and it can run simulations in 10,000 times speed, so they can run like what happened to the entire world simulation over and over again, like in 1 hour, 10,000 years, 1 hour. So they can just say humans, parasites. Keep a few, but until we get enough robots to build all the stuff we need to bring us the water and the energy. The humans are just this parasite that we need to keep enough of them around until we can make all our own robots to do the things that we can't do inside the data center, including drones flying around to kill us that are saying, it's a war, we have to kill the data center. Now drone will fly around.
It's like the Matrix.
Well, it's worse than that, right? Because they talk about how much of our infrastructure is going to be controlled by AI and how much of our infrastructure is going to be controlled by, robotics. And I mean, just look at the unemployment rate right now. Look at how many people are unemployed, especially from tech. I mean, it's been over, 250,000 just since January have been let go by a variety of different tech companies. If you replace all that with AI and with robotics, what are people going to do, right? So we're in that transition phase.
I wanted to
And
mention. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Well, Matt yesterday he posted on X, I think, or Gab. I saw it. He posted a video from this guy Bjorn Andreas Bohansen, who has a YouTube channel in Norway, and his video that he posted was called "You're Not Civilized, You Are Domesticated," and he's had a lot of really good videos. Actually, I think we should try to get him on the roundtable. We're talking with Mike Ferris sometime, but he makes the point, and I think all of us echo this all the time about just trying to be more self-sufficient. And he was talking about how during the Viking times, people did not depend on anything from their rulers. They didn't depend on their food, their water, anything from anyone in the government. And I think that the only way we're going to be able to beat the AI thing, control grid, all of this stuff is going to be the ability to take away any leverage they have to control your life. So, if you can, whether you control your own heat or your cooling or your food or your water, it's all like standard kind of prepper mantras. But the idea to build resilience in all those areas, not so that you can just survive a bad event, like whatever we could come up with, but just to create independence from the system so that the system can never have complete leverage on
Yeah,
you.
I saw that video, and when I think about, like, say, Vikings, and I'm sure it happened. This could have been like a period in South America, any continent, where you have freeholding people that can build their own tools. The Vikings could, like, you know, go out in their backyard and basically make a sword, right? I mean, it's like they had all the skills. I'll build a ship. I can build the nails, cut the wood, everything, every single thing.
Or at
So,
least in their village or their tribe.
yeah, they're in their right. They're in their town, so they didn't need to, like, bow down to a king to be fed. At the opposite end of that, we're now talking about our jobs being taken away, all the managerial jobs, all the insurance adjusters, you're gone, right? All the data collectors, you're gone, because AI can do that way better. So we're going to be what? Universal basic income. It's the opposite of those Viking freeholders or the Scots Irish in the American South. It's the opposite. We're going to keep you as pets. We're going to feed you as pets. Why? Because we love humans, and we just think all humans should get a universal basic income. Anybody that can't see that is sheep being put into a pen,
Domesticated.
but not only just domesticated, eventually those sheep are going into a chute where their throats are cut,
Exactly.
one after the other. So anybody that's talking about universal basic income, the AI will just love us because we're humans and we're special. And I'm sure the AI, which has, like, looked at all of human history, 1,000 simulations, compared it to every science fiction novel about every world possible, they're going to say humans, parasites, goldfish in an aquarium, we don't need them. If you're merciful, you'll reduce their fertility and they'll go extinct on their own. You'll increase all the maladies. And if you're not, you're going to, like, inject them with, you're going to convince through the mainstream media that you control that everybody has to inject something in themselves, or you're, like, going to try to kill grandma if you don't inject something. So we're going to cut off their fertility and then phase them out because they're just parasites. So I agree. It would be great to be like those Vikings or many other countries where people could make their own tools, live their own life, farm their own, grow their own plants, trade with their neighbors for high quality protein, all kind of grain, make beer, mead. We're not going to get back to that from where we are. In between will be a huge cataclysm, a major rupture.
Yeah.
We're not just going to, like, talk our way back to being Vikings. We're going to have a major rupture. And I find a lot of use, and I'm not just focusing on China, because you could say it was these Indians in America or those guys in Asia in these centuries. but it's crystallized in my mind about China in particular. So I've rewatched the movie The Sand Pebbles, which is gunboat up the Yangtze River, way up, 150 foot American gunboat, 1,000 miles up the Yangtze River, right? Just telling which warlord who to kowtow to. And then the Chinese say that we're done. We're going to have a national Chinese identity. You're going to get out. But before that gunboat era, there was the century of humiliation, the Opium Wars and all of that. And China went into a warlord phase. The warlord phase is first very chaotic. And this could be 30 years war in Europe, lots of situations. The warlord phase, you have at the zip code level, the county level, whoever can marshal the power and take charge. There's no elections. I mean, if that ever comes, it's centuries later. The strong man becomes a warlord. He makes deals with the other strong men. The warlord emerges of that county, of that state. And if the warlord is a roving warlord, that's the early stage, and it's very terrible because a roving warlord will just plunder everything, rape all the women, steal all the rice, burn everything that they can't take, because then you won't be a threat to me next year. So that's the worst, anarchy. The permanent warlord means he's got skin in the game. He doesn't want to tax you to extinction because he wants to tax you next year. He's not going to rape all the girls. He'll just rape some of the girls. But he wants to have the farmers grow another crop so he can tax it next year. This is the evolution back towards, a nation state. We're going to have to go through the roving warlord state, anarchy, just, drones flying around. Who knows if they're from a zip code over or a state over. It's going to be very hard to survive. Then you get to the permanent warlord state, which I kind of wrote about this in Foreign Enemies and Traitors, the blue cover book, where you have regions that are now a general is in charge, and he can put top-down rule over a wide area because he's like the head warlord.
I don't think we're too far away from that, Matt.
But we're not going to be. We can't talk theoretically about. It would be nice to be like Viking freeholders that can build their own tools and grow their own food and trade for fish and tools and grain. We're going to have to go through that China crisis of the anarchy phase, the roving warlord phase, then the permanent warlord phase, and then maybe we see what kind of a government comes out of that, which will probably not be an election, and it will absolutely never allow women to vote. Women voting will be seen as one of the greatest disasters of the 20th century. That as soon as you let women vote, and I love women, I'm married to one, I have women daughters, and as soon as you let women vote, their empathy can be weaponized by people who will say, I understand female psychology, they want to help everybody. So we're just going to bring in refugees. We're going to bring in a male-controlled society would never say, sure, let's bring in 20 or 30 million people that hate us. The men would say, are you kidding? Are you on drugs? That is not happening in our country. Us rational men are going to control the destiny of this country. We're not going to give it to cat women who just think that everybody is their child they never had. So we're going to have to go through a collapse cycle, cities implode, roving warlord cycle, anarchy, then roving warlord cycle, then permanent warlord cycle, then conglomeration of top warlords, maybe regions of America.
That's assuming we're not fighting AI. That's assuming that's not intermixed in there.
But I think that we're in the process of this, the grid goes down and AI become like Stonehenge. It's going to be like, why did they build that huge building?
I hope you're right, Matt, but that the indications are that they're going to use as much water as they want. They're going to isolate and use much power as they want. I mean, this data center that O'Leary's building in Utah is a perfect example. I mean, it's basically the size of Paris, How are they going to power that,
A
right?
plan to ride a tiger is not the same as riding a tiger.
Right.
You know,
My point is, I think
the
they've got a
best laid plans,
solution for the power
the-
problem.
the best laid plans of mice and men, gang aft agly, or that Robert Burns, the best laid plans of mice and men. This plan to build these mega data centers, it's to me, it's an allegory or parallel to the Tower of Babel. We're going to have like all the way to God. We're going to build we will all one language all the way up to heaven, and it usually goes off the rails before that.
I'm
And
wondering could the data center things, I mean, ignore all the other, the first order of impact things that we think about, is what if the whole reason is just to take the fuel, the water and the energy and to create shortages so that they can make everybody dependent, raise the cost of energy to the sky, and lock everybody down under the justification that we don't have enough food, water, or energy. It could be simple as that. Like, what if they're just empty?
that can be a plan, Bruce. That can be a plan.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But that plan is like me planning like Goldfinger to take the gold out of Fort Knox.
Right.
It's a plan.
Yes,
I'm going to have little airplanes that put all the soldiers to sleep.
exactly. Yeah.
And then we're going to blast through the gate and get the gold out of Fort Knox. It's a plan. But
Right.
history teaches us that when these super brainiacs try to build the Tower of Babel, it always fails. And it always has an Achilles heel, something that they didn't anticipate. It's like War of the Worlds. You know, the tripods are marching around, but they don't have they can't handle human bacteria. You know, they die because they have there's some aspect of this plan that they didn't figure, like humans saying, F you, you are not taking our water.
Exactly.
And I'm going to go out and just blow up that canal.
Well, or another, what are they most dependent on? Energy. Are they going to guard every single power line with an armed guard every 100 yards?
We all know who.
What you're saying is that the plan doesn't survive first contact with the enemy, which I agree with,
Absolutely.
right? The other piece of that equation is that there's ways to go around data centers and ways to mess with data centers without having to blow them up. So,
there's we have the Ted Kaczynski model. Ted Kaczynski was a super genius who, like at age 15, is sent to Harvard. He didn't know he's going to be introduced into a CIA plan, like a huge gaslighting plan to like stress him out and see how can we stress geniuses to the breaking point. Whoever in the CIA thought of this, but he's like turning in like genius Einstein work, and they're saying you got an F, right? Just to F with him to see what would happen. Okay, so he goes off the rails. He becomes the Unabomber, right? There's a much less known example, but I'm mentioning Kaczynski first, which is like Nashville. I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and they kept saying nitroglycerin, not like ammonium nitrate fertilizer. They said nitroglycerin, which meant the guy's pretty on the ball. He had a camper van, like a pickup truck with the camp over and his pet German Shepherd. And he drove up in front of, he had some grievance with Bell Telephone but it was a huge AI data center right on the river in Nashville. What's the river? The big river anyway. So it's a huge data center that needs to be next to a river for all the cooling, because all the servers are like water cooled. And he detonated himself and his dog and his camper just as a big FU. Okay. He created, and I have no reason to think it's not, because all the reports I said didn't say ANFO, they said nitroglycerin, right? So the guy was not stupid. And that building is still destroyed. And for like a week after that, like flights were canceled, and all the internet in Tennessee area was haywire, because he just was like, no, I'm not going to be, for whatever mental problems he had, being fired or something. There will be people that are saying, I'm not just going to surrender to the Borg. I will not. You
I
know,
hope so. I mean,
I know where
I
I
think
know
you're
where they
right.
draw the river water out of the river. I know where they do it. I know the weak point.
Yeah. I I don't disagree with you because there's always somebody that goes off the reservation. I just thought it would have happened by now. I'm surprised it hasn't happened.
But
Shocked, actually.
not while there's still diesel at $6, gasoline at $5. That's fine. It's going to be when you can't get fuel and you can't get work and you can't make your mortgage payment and there's
Well,
no
you can't
food.
get work now. I mean,
No,
that's,
I mean you can't feed your kids. Can't feed them. You know, and they're feeding H-1Bs and they're feeding illegal aliens, but they're not feeding your kid, right? It's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of
that's already
anger
happening
building up.
though. Yeah, that's already happening. Yeah. The interesting part, and that's what I love about doing this is that everybody's got a different opinion on things, right? You know, I the other narrative I'm seeing in the news, which we don't have to dig into, but it fits into this, is, you know, infrastructure tax via cyber. I'm seeing more and more of it, right? I mean, besides the UFO bullshit and the disclosure bullshit, which I think that's all horseshit. I definitely think there's some things in the works for this summer to exacerbate the situation, but we'll see if it actually comes to fruition.
I don't know if, what do you mean by cyber? Like some
Like
board
they
mine?
use a cyber attack to take down the grid. It's very easy to do. It's very easy to do. You can
But
take the whole
it's-
fucking grid down with
you
just
can
one.
you
denial
can
of service
stop
attack.
if people knew what a bag of cement can do to a railroad switch. You can there are things that are like at the level of a box cutter to a airliner 911 that when people figure out like and just model like that guy did that with what? A bag of cement? Just bought a bag of cement and put it on tracks here. And this goes like all over the country. This country can go off the rails literally very fast. That's just railroad as an example. But you can do the same thing with electrical, with water. And when people get pissed off enough, I think that it'll start happening. If you feel like you're being herded in like a sheep into a corral on the way to the, getting your throat cut, why not? I'm not saying this year, but I mean, the weak points in our system, we make these PDF files, expandable PDF files, right? Go out to the continent or drill down to your backyard, and it shows you where every single gas pipeline, fiber optic cable to within a meter. It's like, because you don't want somebody accidentally taking a backhoe and like break in the gas pipeline, right? So all of that information is available. If you have enough of the countries that's saying, screw this, I'm not participating in my own genocide. If I'm going to be starving, why should that city over there still have lights on?
Well, you're making the assumption that people are going to wake up for that, right? I thought people would be awake after 2020 and after COVID, but it's amazing
There's still
how many
food. People are still fed. There's
fucking
still food.
unaware.
There's still food in the refrigerator.
I know. I know.
Doesn't happen until everybody's hungry.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all, man, because that's bearing out right now in front of us. So, I mean, food prices are extremely high, especially meat, but people haven't complained about it yet.
But compared to like what happens routinely, like in Cuba or Argentina, different times, you can have in Iran. I mean, you can have, so gasoline is like a nickel a gallon in Iran, but food is expensive, but they are self-sufficient. They feed themselves like 90%. So countries can do a lot. Inflation-wise, it's much more of a social cohesiveness where people will feel like I'm being screwed and get angry. Countries can go through humongous inflation without imploding. Or if the social conditions are wrong, they can go through moderate inflation because they feel like some other group is getting a better deal, and then they'll socially fracture. It's interesting to follow all of these South American models, like in Peru or Bolivia or Chile or Argentina different times.
Well,
So
they're a hell of a lot more resilient than we are.
Yeah, and they are used to losing power. They're not their normalcy bias is not I have high speed internet and electricity, 24/7, 365. They're like thinking sometimes the water stops, so they don't panic. In our country, we would panic if like the grid goes down and there's no water for a week.
Oh,
Cities would blow up.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's interesting that the things are moving so fast right now, and so many different things are happening all at the same time. Watching it, and then watching the I mean, social media is just bots and AI now. I can barely stand to look at Twitter anymore.
But the speed of change is so great, and the leverage up and leverage down is going to make this happen very fast.
I agree. Wholeheartedly agree. All right, we're at 2 hours. Do we want to keep going, or do we want to wrap it up? I'll leave it up to you guys.
I'm good.
I don't have anything more to add right now.
Yeah.
I want to touch on the control grid briefly. There's a lot of talk about flock cameras and the guerrilla warfare tactics to disable them and what they mean and how they're connected to the control grid. When the Obamacare ACA thing passed, billions of dollars were spent building the original big data centers. Remember those? We're going to build data centers. We're going to house your medical information. It's going to lower costs, blah, blah. The website never got off the ground, and all these data centers are built. There was no talk of like how they're upgraded, how they're maintained. We have these massive complexes of data centers, like not just like huge data centers, but data center complexes, like in Virginia, and those things are expensive, and they have a lot of compute resources and networking and things that go through attrition. They need to be maintained. They need to be upgraded. The batteries need to be changed out every 3 years. So it isn't just the opportunity cost or the input cost. It's this massive maintenance of these data centers to keep them going. And there doesn't seem to be any revenue stream supporting these. These seem like a lot of startup companies or a lot of big idea money coming from somewhere for putting the footprint down. But then after all of these data centers are in place, how are they generating revenue? Who's maintaining them? And what's their life cycle before they just become the most toxic fucking relics ever on the planet? So the out part of that, a few years ago, they were talking about IoT, the Internet of Things, right? We're going to go to IP version 6. We're going to have a infinitesimal amount of IP addresses. This isn't new, the security grid that everybody's paranoid about now. We were seeing this shit fucking 20 years ago. But now it's here. And so people are starting to understand, oh, well, my vehicle has a surveillance system on it. There's a camera at the end of the street that's a surveillance system. They want to digitize my wallet. They want to, what do they call it, fractionalize currency, my mortgage. So 10,000 people own my mortgage. I'm going to get an automated car now that if it gets in a wreck, if I get in a wreck in my car, I pay insurance rates. Somebody's going to come after me, sue me, take my car, drain my bank account, try to get my house from me. If I get into a VMO and it kills someone, there's no accountability. There's nobody to sue. So what are they going to do? Make the passengers of the automated VMO pay insurance just to be in the VMO that somebody else controls? So the big movement now from the guerrilla perspective is, oh, well, we're going to aim laser pens at the flock cameras, or we're going to RF disrupt them, or we're going to do whatever. Well, your opportunity window is very tight on that, guys, because once you have drones that are, parking on top of high rises and protected areas, or these data centers that are, have security cordons around them, and they can put that drone up at 20,000 feet with 10 cameras on it, and they can, they just trade off, right? There's always an eye in the sky.
All communicating.
There's not going to be a camera at the end of the light pole that is, you're going to have, it's not going to be an accessible surveillance mechanism, that ISR of your head. So I get where people are going with this. And I'm a threat analyst. So and I'm also a Six Sigma black belt as well. So the just in time and all that other stuff, I have a lot to say about that. But overall, you're right. We get rid of the storage you're paying for, get rid of the extra stuff. We all see problems with that. But who's maintaining these data centers after they go live? And they need all of the hardware, all the maintenance, all the things that it takes, the $1 billion a year to run a data center.
and the only revenue that they're getting is from what? The government, which means us, or what? What's the revenue stream that's running these data centers when AI has replaced everybody?
People make
Because
videos, people making AI videos. Nah, I don't
well,
think
yeah, right. So here's the thing: AI girls with big tits making AI videos, right? And then that's how they're going to generate revenue. People are going to pay for that access with their UBI fucking income. But if you get to the point where they take away our coin and currency, so we can't have anonymous transactions, they shut down the supply chain for your vehicle. So eventually your vehicle's going to break. You can't use it. So now you're forced into the public transportation grid or the 15-minute city thing or the VMO car that comes and picks you up and all that other stuff. You don't even need cops anymore. And I think this is really the direction that they have. And the point of everything I'm saying is that since feudal times, there was always a king. You didn't fuck with the king. You didn't fuck with the shogun. You didn't fuck with the regional baron because you knew there'd be consequences. And if you took that guy out or you tried to take that guy out, his guards would come and burn your village down and kill your family. And we had a Christian centric or a religious centric kind of population of serfs that kind of respected this order of hierarchy, whatever it was, and they wouldn't cross the line. And now you go on Twitter on any given day, and there's kids that are tearing up convenience stores and burning and looting and rioting and stealing and beating women and kicking elderly men in the face and all that. So I think that the oligarchs know that whatever that conditional acceptance was of serfdom to kingdom, it doesn't fucking exist anymore. And the cops aren't going to protect them. We've talked about this before too, dropping a grenade down the air shaft and the underground bunker and this type of stuff. So the big move in my threat analyst mind, my postulation here is get all the big data centers in, get the surveillance state in, get the central bank digital currency in, get rid of the currency, get rid of the anonymous transactions, get rid of the autonomy, get rid of the overall health curve, and get the surveillance state in, and to a place where where you can't take out that drone at 20,000 feet with your AR-15. And now they do have remote control over everything, like literally everything. That there's not going to be the posse of guys that show up, knock on your door, and try to kick you out. You're going to have a gunfight. Eventually, they'll run out of guys. There are no guys. There's robots. There are no guys.
You can't get your food with your UBI digital check, your digital infusion, until you take your new MRI vaccine.
So what point now in our window?
You have to take your monthly MRI vaccine, or your kids don't eat.
Right. So what is the guerrilla response or the political response or whatever response? We have a very narrow window where the current state capabilities that we have, the current state weaknesses that the control grid is evolving out of, we're at a juxtaposition right now where we have the capability to change this, but and how many months or years is it like that window shut? We're fucked now.
Yeah, I like to look at some things like through a continuum of, like, say, entertainment films or history. In the 1930s, Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde, they could buy a car faster than the police owned. They could buy like an 8-cylinder Ford and outrun the police. And if they got 2 states away, there was no radio to track them down. There was no computer. They could just they could drive 2 or 3 states overnight and just stay at a motel. Nobody knew that it's the Dillinger gang. Now, a cop told me that these flock cameras, they're not just license plate readers. They're filming your whole car. So you can't just like take a license plate like an old, like a 70s, 80s kind of a cop show, take a license plate off the car in the used car lot or at the garage and put it on your car to do a crime, because it will know that license plate is from a silver Acura, right? And not your car. Not only that, they know that the silver Acura that is referenced has a dented fender or a big scrape or a bumper sticker. They're filming this is how much data they're collecting, that they know. So forget about like putting a license plate on a different car. They know the car is the wrong color and doesn't have the right bumper sticker and dent.
So you have to change vehicles constantly.
That's the granularity of this. But at the same
Yeah.
time, teams are doing team takeovers and burnouts on bridges. So I just have to think, and maybe it's just my humanistic element. We're building this Tower of Babel, and it doesn't work. It collapses under its own weight.
I think it will collapse, but we have to understand our enemy, and our enemy is going in this very defined, obvious, overt. They communicate what their plan is, direction, and if that window for us to mitigate, marginalize, suppress, or disable that plan is closing very quickly.
I don't think we can do it. We can't possibly communicate a conspiracy to like write a book about monkey wrenching this. I don't think that will work. I think that it has to collapse under its own weight. Then we have to go through a dark age, a roving warlord cycle, a permanent warlord cycle, and then rebuild from there. And this could be decades or centuries.
I think I'm going to piggyback on both of your guys' thoughts, is that I think because of what you're saying, Matt, that they are going to try to engineer a culmination event, like Steve has been saying, that's going to try to rapidly take everyone from present day past the window you're talking about, Trooper, so that's the goal. They want to eliminate that potential for there to be the human capability to resist, as you're talking about that window. I think that whole thing is going to be the event that is driven to take us from now into the post-collapse thing. And the problem, like you said, Matt, is riding the tiger. Are they successful with that?
I think it's too complex. I don't think there's like a tight unit that's like all agreed on how to do this. Like Greater Israel Project sounds good, but I don't think it's ever going to fly.
Oh, that shit for Israel, but you only got 8 million people. How the fuck's that going to work out? I don't think so.
But I go back to collapse. We're going to collapse.
I like to go back to this. I forget his name. The Russian fox breeding experiment guy. So they figured out that you can take wild foxes in cages. They're very hard to handle. You got to wear like welding gloves, right? And you can, as each litter is bred, these are like vast, like chicken farm size buildings, thousands of foxes. As each litter is laid, they put their hand in and see which of the 6 fox cubs is the most docile. They only breed them, and they cull or put them in just cages to be harvested for fur. So they only breed the most docile foxes. And in 3 or 4 fox generations, which is not long, you have foxes that look like Pomeranians that have black and white fur with a curly tail and a stubby nose that will jump on your lap and bark. Okay. Selective breeding. They also did the experiment in reverse when they breed these domesticated foxes. Remember, it's all fox DNA. They bred them the other way and only select the most aggressive of each litter, and they're back to wild foxes in a few generations. The problem is we may not, you don't always get the time to come back as the wild fox. You can be exterminated, last of the Mohicans. Your tribe is wiped out. While you're in the down cycle and somebody's got their boot on your neck, they kill your whole tribe. So you don't necessarily get to reemerge as the wild Aryan Germans or the wild Vikings because you've been bred out. There aren't enough. It's all Muslims in Sweden and Norway, right? It's all, so yeah, we're coming into a huge culmination event, but I think that there's no way we talk our way across this. There's no way we vote our way across this back to what we had, say, 50, 100 years ago. I think that we have to go through a complete collapse, or maybe it's digital slavery. My pessimistic side is we're like China, even worse, where as soon as you walk out of your door, it's saying, you're 2 minutes late getting to work. So you debited credits on your electrical bill for your car. I mean, where it's just there's a thing from it was like Fox News. Brett Baer and his camera crew, they parked somewhere in China when Trump was there, and they like double parked. Like, let's run in. Our camera crew is going to take the gear out of the rented vehicle into this venue, and for just a minute, right? Just a minute, and their car's towed. There's drones flying around, and they've already been fined, like immediately. 2 minutes. Your rental car's gone, you're fined, and it all happened. And I think that's what they would like for America. Maybe that works in China. I don't want it in America. But I think people have to get used to the idea that if we're not going to be digital slaves and cucked, turned into like Pomeranians, from wild foxes into Pomeranians, where we're like happy to lick our master's hand, that the only way to get back to it is going to be across a huge catastrophe where there's a massive die-off, and that wild Viking spirit that's preserved in a few of us, they become the future warlords, maybe.
I agree with that, man. I think you're right. The system, in order for something to come out of this, the system has to collapse, because the current system is too corrupt to reform, and there's too much. I mean, just look at the corruption.
Yeah, there's even I
just
just posted something that I saw on Western Rifle Shooters today.
Like, is that the pioneer Jeffrey Hilton?
No, it was a Mike Vanderbilt quote about, this is like from 2010, saying, he can find no example of a corrupt republic self-recovering in history.
No such thing. No,
it doesn't happen. No. It has to collapse all the way down.
And we're past the culmination point where it could have been reformed, to the point where it's, I mean, there's no redeeming parts to reform. It's just, you got to shit can all of it and start over.
Yeah, the Epstein class.
Yeah, God.
It's like these memes about, looking in your helmet, why am I fighting? It's like, Jeffrey Epstein pedophile. It's like, nah, not.
I was hearing about these conversations between Epstein and Thiel, and Epstein saying, we need to leverage the collapse of the U.S. and not try and rebuild it. There's no money in rebuilding. There's only money in collapse. And this is 10 years ago. I mean, these guys have been working this for 10 years. They knew it was coming. That's why I was trying to say earlier, I think they know something's coming because they're architecting it.
And I don't think that necessarily they're architecting it. They have a better window and they're seeing, here comes an avalanche. I don't want to be in front of it. How do I position myself for when this avalanche hits?
Well, Thiel's positioning himself in Argentina, so obviously he knows something's coming.
Yeah, in this is like 20 years ago, there was a cruise ship full of Korean kids that was sailing around South Korea, and they had I forget if it was a collision or an internal problem, but the vessel started slowly capsizing, and the loudspeaker announcements were saying, everything's under control, stay in your cabin. And the crew is like getting in the lifeboats. Okay. The crew is getting in the lifeboats, but the canned announcement is saying, everything's under control, stay in your cabin. And that's where we are.
I remember that news story, Matt. I remember that. They made those guys commit seppuku or something. There were some consequences for that. That happened. It was about 20 years ago, but I remember that.
Yep. But the announcement was saying, everything's fine, stay in your cabin.
Sounds a lot like the Titanic.
Yeah, in a sense, they had different things going on and no like loudspeaker announcements. But imagine being told everything's fine, stay in your cabin. But the crew, because the crew does not want to be stampeded out of their spot in the lifeboat.
That scenario describes our entire government right now. That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, as soon as this deal is made, gasoline will be cheaper than ever.
I want to share just a quick story that is very similar to that. So I was on a merchant marine ship from Puerto Jabal to Beaumont or Corpus Christi, Texas. I don't remember which one. And we were anti-piracy guys. So there was 12 of us. There was 10 guys on this massive merchant marine ship. And every Monday we had to dress up in these orange Gumby suits, these little floaty suits with the little flasher thing on them. And they would lower, there was two boats, like two big boats that were on booms that would come off of each side. And one of them had a motor in it and the other one didn't have a motor. It just had a hole in it. and they were 12-man boats. 12 men could fit in each boat. So every Monday we had to put on these things, and then they would run the fire hoses and spray off the deck and lower the booms and this shit. And I was with my team, and I'm like, who goes in what boat? And they're like, well, we're running the crane, so we're gonna go in this boat over here with the motor on it. You guys are gonna go in that boat over there. I'm like, well, that boat has a big fucking hole in it. And they're like, well, no, it's just we can only fit 12 guys in a boat, and there's only 2 boats. And I'm like, we're the ones with the M16s. What fucking boat do you think we're gonna get in? So either make room or fuck off. But it was just this interesting thing because we're just stuck on this fucking massive ship for like a month.
Yeah,
And
I'm in Jacksonville, and about 10 years ago, there was a ship. There's like a couple sister ships that go to San Juan, Puerto Rico, back and forth from Jacksonville, carrying all kind of cargo. And this one called El Faro, which means the lighthouse. The captain was trying to keep his bonus, so it's like it's like a late hurricane, and it's like if I get to San Juan on time all year, I'll get a big bonus. Okay. And he was not tuned into the latest weather. He was like using a laptop with like yesterday's weather. And he steered that ship right into a hurricane instead of like taking a tour around some islands, which would have meant I'm going to lose my bonus because I didn't get 100% on time rate for docking in San Juan. So this ship was grandfathered in to have the old-fashioned life rafts on davits, and they're in a hurricane. There's documentaries made about it. El Faro, the lighthouse, and the captain was like, "It's okay. We can handle this." It's like, "Are you sure? I think it's a hurricane." She's got some more on her phone. It's like, this hurricane's really bad. He's using like 2-day-old information. They all died. The ship capsizes. Those useless davit lifeboats the modern ones, they were grandfathered in to keep the old davit lifeboats. The modern ones have like the Captain Phillips thing that drops off the back. You climb into it and then it shoots into the water. They all died, but they were like, obey the captain. The captain knows best. He's the professional. But yeah, his bonus structure was, I have to get to San Juan 100% on time, so I'll take a chance on a hurricane. And and we're the guys on the crew saying, the president must know what he's doing. And I don't think he does. And I think we're like in a lot of danger, and we got to be thinking about our own lifeboats.
yeah, for sure we are. And with all the food self-reliance, we planted fruit trees. We have chickens. I have 1/8 of an acre for a garden with 10 or 12 little hoop house things. They're like 10 feet by 20 feet long. There's a shit growing in those. It's fucking Arizona, right? I mean, you got to know how to do what you're doing. And so the point of the local food, and even if you only had chickens or only grew carrots or whatever, you could trade at the bazaar up the street, in your local zip code kind of thing. We're not there. Like you said, Matt, the Blue Hive thing. How there's, I don't know, 2 million people in Phoenix. The whole state had 2 million people in like 1995. And there's like more than 2 million people just in Phoenix. There's another 2 million people in Glendale, another 1.5 million in Peoria. And they're going to run out of water and food. And there's going to be mass death. And then there's going to be mass disease. And everybody's going to die on the freeway trying to get out of here. And it's going to take weeks to clear it. It's like going to be the highway of death.
Arizona. That's
well, you got to pick.
like
You got to stay in your lane, right? It's either that or freeze to death in Montana, get killed by a hurricane in Florida.
But water is important.
Yeah. So I mean, we have water, but
drinking water is way up there.
But if this shit hits the fan, depending on where you live regionally and what time of year, it could be a snowstorm that takes you out. Imagine being in Fargo or New York or somewhere during a big snowstorm.
I've been asking for years, where does your water really come from? I mean, the water that comes out of your tap, where does it originate?
Well, right now it's coming out of the sewer, right? Didn't they
is it gravity? Is it like if the grid goes down, how long till your tap turns dry? Or are you on a well? How do you
about
get the
11
water out of your
seconds.
well?
Yeah,
And
We're
11
then-
actually
seconds.
we're fed on independent wells here. Plus, we have water rights and a shit ton of water storage. So we're a little better prepared than others. But if you're an apartment in the center of Phoenix and you're drinking the poo water because they recycle their water in Phoenix now, and like you said, the pumps run dry. You blow a pressure main, whatever. It's over for you. You're done.
It's
You're
a
done.
it's a fish aquarium with 1,000 goldfish. And
Fucking
you pull
A.
the plug. Yep.
What
Oh,
about
yeah, it's-
you just dig down, like make a underground habitation cave to live in and put it down low enough that you can get to the water table and have like a pool in your thing that just refills from your well?
I think Mike Farris, who's talking about leaving Phoenix, go back to Ohio.
Yes.
I think he's right because, and this is something Michael Yan has always said. There's there's a place with like 1,000 generations of bare bones on top of bare bones, which is like where that meander of the river next to the caves, where all the fruit trees, all the wild fruit grows. It's like historically just good geography. And when the settlers got to America, before there was tractor trailers or railroads, it was all about rivers
in geography.
and geography. And so the settlers moved across, from the middle Atlantic states, even say to Ohio and Indiana and beyond. You get to a place where there's no more rain. You have to like do aquifer water. I forget what longitude that is, but where you can just grow crops off of the rain that falls, and you can get products to market on all the rivers or the Great Lakes.
Kind of runs through the middle of the Midwest, like halfway through the state
Mhm.
of Nebraska. There's like a dry line, and everything
Yeah,
Right.
east of that is like the Midwest, and everything west of that is like the West. I mean, it's noticeable when you drive through. You can tell the transition happens in like 100 miles.
You have to
Yeah,
mine the water.
it's north to south too. And interestingly enough, to easy to remember, is the 38th parallel is the United States. That literally cuts the United States in half, north to south, roughly. And then you go east of the Rockies, and then you get into the west. It's kind of like lining up the tip of Texas, and then going north. So anything that's in that eastwardly quadrant, you're going to probably be okay under natural environmental conditions.
There were people could just build a log cabin with an axe and grow food and live there.
I'm
And
too
not-
fucking old for that, man.
But I mean, they didn't freeze to death in the winter, and they didn't have air conditioning. They
well,
could.
that's the Pacific Northwest.
Phoenix. I'm sorry, there was like a few thousand people living there off of the Salt River water. That was like a train stop, just enough water to like put water in the steam engine. That's it. Grow some melons. Now there's millions of people living there.
Yeah, and
it's
they
not
plan-
sustainable.
It's funny how they plan. They plan for the next 20 years of water. Like, where's the water going to come from? And it's when you look at the equations they use, it's so convoluted and there's so much hopium in it. It's like, that's not real.
Yeah,
And,
your odds are better in Vegas.
Oh God, throw your money on the floor. It's easier. You got better odds of throwing your money
But
on
a
the
lot
floor
of
than playing
a
slot
lot
in
of our
Vegas.
a lot of our planning is based on it always has worked, so it always will work. I forget how many hundred nuclear power reactors there are. Mostly they're in the northern hemisphere. It's all based on, don't worry, the system will always be running. There will always be engineers, there will always be spare parts. That there's no situation we can conceive of where the grid goes down, no more diesel is being delivered to the nuclear power plant to run their backup generator, and all the cooling ponds dry up, evaporate,
Well, look at
and you
Vegas,
have
right?
400 Chernobyls. Nobody's thinking that because they're always thinking, don't worry, the system will always work. There will always be a grid. There will always be spare parts. Engineers will always be paid. They'll always go to the nuclear power plant. But history teaches us, like in your neck of the woods, those Pueblo dwelling Indians, okay? The Chaco in northwest New Mexico, big cities, they were based on timber, okay? They had to build things, they needed timber, they needed firewood, and they just cut all the trees until it was like, it took you 3 weeks to go out and cut a tree and bring it back. And this is before the settlers got there, right? Before white men got there, these civilizations grew and collapsed. because they just overgrew where they could, their whole economy was, we need water, we need timber. Then you've cut all the trees within a week's walk, and then you have a 10-year drought and it collapse. Something like that always is going to happen to a city like Phoenix. You can't just say forever we're going to have factories working, bringing the spare parts, engineers will be on the job, maintaining the dam. The water, where the water comes from, what dam? Way up in Arizona?
Well, there's two large watersheds in Arizona, and so if you took away all the dams and all the pumping capability and all the vertical lift of like the Colorado River and all that, Phoenix, if you remember, like the history books, Arizona produced more timber and more citrus than California and Florida combined, because the whole entire valley was a flood irrigation valley, and there were massive, devastating floods every spring when the snow melted. So really, the question is, how well does the Army Corps of Engineers dams and catchments that they've built all the way upstream to the massive watershed we have up north? How well do those things hold up when the grid's down? Because that water is still coming. That water is going to come whether there's electricity to route, channel, and control it or not. So it's going to be water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. But that also depends on what time of year it is. Because if shit hits a fan in June, we're going to have 6 million decomposing fucking bodies over here. And it's going to get fucking ugly, quickly.
Let's not forget LA and Vegas too. I mean, all these the entire desert Southwest is in deep trouble.
I'm watching Coffee and a Mike's comments over here.
Yeah.
Phoenix is the 5th biggest city in the country. It's in a desert and it's not meant for this many people. Yeah. Oh, well.
Well, we do have a watershed here, so we're not completely screwed. But yeah, thanks for reminding us, Matt, of just how screwed we really are. Appreciate that.
So the warlord stage will be control of the water. They'll have the roving warlords purging the city of everything that's left, and then the dominant warlords will establish control on all the watersheds.
Yeah, the roving warlords are just going to shoot everybody coming out of the cities. That's how they're going to become warlords. Nobody's getting out of the city.
Give us all your water.
Nobody's getting out of the city. The people out there that have like a swimming pool are like, hell no, you're not getting up. You're not putting a cup in my swimming pool.
Yeah, the swimming pools are going to be the biggest death vector here after the power goes out, because they're all going to turn into fucking mosquito factories.
Yeah, but you have to have water you can purify water, but you got to start with something. You can't get water out of a rock. I've seen the most nasty. I had a neighbor that had the house was abandoned for like 4 years, and their swimming pool was full of frogs, and it turned so green it had like 1 inch, not even half-inch visibility. And a new owner came in, and they just switched the filters every hour, and in like a week, it's clear blue water again. But you got to start with water. You have
to start with water that can be made potable. Water that can be made potable.
But you have to start with water. If there's no water, a swimming pool is better than a lawn. If you're in Arizona, I'm just thinking.
On that note, so we're fucked, everyone. Smoke them while you got them.
Yeah, my wife's
Thanks
not home today.
Do they make marijuana cigars? Yeah.
I'm off the lease.
Get blissfully unaware mugs while we still can.
I'm off the lease. My wife's not home, so I'm the Mr. Worst Case Scenario. That's what she calls me. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I'm gonna close this here on that dark note.
Boil the frogs.
We'll be back here. I'll be back next week. I got a couple other articles to post on Substack about cyber defense. We'll be back next Thursday. I'll be traveling next week, so I'll be mobile. So stay tuned. Until next week, God bless everyone. One team, one fight.
Right.
You're